The plan was to get rid of us, the both of us, myself and Anton, so that they can operate freely. And I remember one of the guys told me during the hearing to say that if the company doesn't dismiss me, then they're leaving them with no choice, but they will have to shoot me.
And so I'm like working out, he's sleeping in the next room. All of a sudden he comes in the room and his like hair's kind of crazy, his eyes are bloodshot. I was like, hey man, like what's going on? And he looks at me and he goes, they got him. Got who? It's like, they got Anton. Basically, they pretended like their car had broken down, and they went up to Anton, who was, I think, working on his truck at the time, pretended like they needed help, and Anton's just always in that mode of like, hey, how can I help you guys? And then they basically pulled out their guns and shot him right there. His wife, Grace, came out, and I think she was right there, and then she screamed, and they shot her in the stomach. And then one of his kids tried to get his sidearm, and they shot at him before taking off.
Anton didn't deserve what happened to him, but it happened. So if it happens to me, so be it. But I won't stop doing what I'm supposed to do.
All right, guys, I know that was a long, like, half hour trying to get all these wires figured out. Thank you so much for your patience, and thank you both for being here all the way from Africa. This is really, really cool.
Yeah, it's really a pleasure to be here and get to meet you in person, Julian. So
absolutely.
Appreciate you having us. I came with them from Africa, but live in Atlanta, so these guys
couldn't tell.
Have a lot. Yeah. I don't know if you can tell by my accent or anything, but not South African.
All right, well, this is a real privilege today because we have Orlat here, who is on the ground. You said 15 years as a ranger in South Africa?
Yes, that's affirmative. Yeah, more than 15 years now.
That's amazing. But you guys, obviously, John, you made a documentary here. You had a whole team doing it with you as well. I think you were making it for like 6-7 years, something like that?
9 years in total. I've been involved 6, yeah.
Wow, okay. So, essentially, the documentary is amazing, by the way. I had a chance to watch it literally like this afternoon on my walk after the first podcast. It's been a long day right now, but I'm glad we could fit this in while you guys were in town. So, it's amazing, but it's also very sad. Because unfortunately, real life met art in the worst way, and your very close friend Anton, who was a major subject of this documentary, was fairly recently murdered by the poachers who he had been spending his life fighting. So I'm sorry for your loss, by the way. I believe you're his cousin, Leda? That's correct. Yeah. So, by the way, shout out to Leda. Alessi is out of the country right now, everybody. So we were trying to fit this in, and Leda just learned how to use the switcher just now, and she's doing a great job, so bear with us, but I think we're going to be good today. So I think the best way to do this is I want to get to your story, Orlat, and I want to get to your background with Anton from your perspective as well. But John, seeing as you have now put this into a documentary that's endorsed by Prince William and everything, so it's pretty serious. What got you into this topic in the first place?
Yeah, it's a very strange set of circumstances that got me here. I was out in LA for a couple of years working on films out there, mostly camera, assistant camera operating, things like that. And LA kind of burned me out as much as I love California and the mountains and everything out there. It was time to recalibrate a bit because I really wanted to focus more on story development and screenwriting and being more involved in the directing side of things. So stepped back from LA for a little bit. I ended up reconnecting with a university flame, a crush, and she got a job at Emory in Atlanta, and I'd never been to Atlanta. I knew there was a lot of filmmaking going on there, but I was like, what the heck, I'll go check it out. And I think on my first trip down there, I connected with this company called Friendly Human that was doing a lot of corporate videos and also helping a lot of nonprofits in the space do, just projects for good to help them grow. And they had this interesting little trailer for this movie called Rhino Man. And I think they had shot it in 2015 and put it together. And so I was like, these guys are doing some really interesting things. So it wasn't really, I wasn't like, I need to make a story about the Rangers and Rhinos. I just saw this and I thought these guys were doing incredible stories and wanted to try and get some work with them because I'd was just moving to Atlanta and didn't have any. So I tracked them down. I basically stalked them for a year, got some interviews with them. And once I started working there, I was like, so how's this Rhino Man project going? And at that time, it had kind of stagnated a little bit. They were just getting busy with business work. And I took a look at it, and there were all these amazing vignettes about rangers and rhinos. But for me, I really wanted a story arc, coming from more of the narrative scripted background. I wanted to follow someone through their journey throughout the film. And so I connected with Matt Lindenberg, who was from South Africa. He started this project as a way to tell these rangers stories. And I think when he had this idea, it was more of just like, let's get these little short films out about rangers talking about, Rhino Man of the Day. This is what we're doing. Because at the time, just nobody really knew what rangers were doing. This was, I think, before Virunga even came out, which is one of the first big films that kind of cover that topic. And he connected with the production company, and they're like, hey, we'll help you out. And so they went and shot some footage, made this trailer. I think someone from Nat Geo on the social media reached out and was like, hey, so when's the film going to be ready? And that was when they were like, maybe we should make a movie. And yeah, so I got connected. Matt was there, and he still wanted to see this thing go further and grow. And so we just sat down, started brainstorming and figuring out who the main characters would be. And they had already had some footage at that time, and Matt had a relationship with Anton. He'd known him for a long time. He knew Ruben de Kock. And so we kind of realized that these were two of the major storylines that we wanted to grow and develop. And so that kind of sent us on this journey of shooting more and building out the story.
And this is back in 2015, you said?
So it started in 2015. I got connected to it in 2018. So it had been 2-3 years under production when I came in. And then that's when we decided to kind of expand the story a little bit and focus on these characters.
Got it. So it's pretty much like you had a very rough outline of like, oh, here's the setting and everything, and here's some cool footage. And then you're like, okay, let's make the story. Let's build the story on top of that.
Yeah, and it's difficult. I feel like when you're going into a documentary, you might have an idea of what you want to do, but depending on what topic and what kind of story it is, it's like you're learning and trying to figure out who the characters and subjects are. And so I think they did a great job of like exploring all these different avenues. But there's an incredible amount of footage that's not even in the film, different characters, rangers, all kinds of things. But I think what we really wanted to do was narrow it down so we could see through the eyes of these couple, 2-3 people, their journey through this. And that's what we really wanted to focus on. And we ended up raising some funds through the nonprofit Global Conservation Corps, which Matt started as well. And that's when I went to Africa for the first time in 2018 to start fleshing this out. Yeah.
Wow. Okay. So you and I were connected through mutual friend Ryan Tate. Mm-hmm. He runs Vet Paul. He's been on this podcast now twice. It's something that's near and dear to my heart. And this whole topic of this part of conservation, working against the, let's call it what it is, international poaching rings who are trying to destroy the future for our grandkids and great-grandkids to have these magnificent creatures on the earth, this is something that I think needs a lot more attention. And one of the things that's really struck me in all my conversations over the years with Ryan is how much people on the ground from different countries in Africa where these species are take this so damn personally, right? Obviously, you have some people who are on the wrong side of it, who are shooting animals for money, but it's such an emotional tie because it's like this beautiful part, not just of the land, but of the legacy. And I think you guys did an amazing job capturing that in this documentary. You could see it on these rangers who were going through their own like buds training in a way. Yeah. We'll talk about that, but how personally they took it and how emotional they were about it. To say nothing of when tragedy strikes and then it really gets emotional. But Orlat, as we said, you are one of them. So I think we mentioned it. You've been doing this for 15 years. What was your first? Like, do you remember the first moment when you said to yourself, I really want to get involved in protecting these creatures, be it elephants, rhinos, lions, whatever, the poachers are going after?
No, thanks a lot for this opportunity. So when this started, it started at an early age. I think I was still a school kid. But I never realized back then that this was a calling. I will go out from school, then We'll sit around, go out, maybe sit underneath the tree and, look at birds, different birds. And, I was sort of like enjoying the bird calls and the coloring. And, I was curious as to how does that happens, so luckily my granddad was working at Timbavati Private Nature Reserve. Then during school holidays, I will visit him. And one day I saw rangers coming back from work, but I didn't know they were rangers. Then I asked him, what are those guys? What are they doing? And he told me as to those are rangers and this is what they do. And, because at that early age, I had friends who will go out and shoot those birds. And, I started to get frustrated and I was furious, and I never wanted to go out with them because I felt like whatever bird that they were shooting, they were taking away what I was enjoying.
Wait, your friends were how old were they when they were doing that?
We were from local villages, they were shooting birds to eat them,
Oh.
So yeah, they were sort of like hunting, if I may call it that way.
Yeah.
So, and when I saw them, I was like, yeah, one day I wanna be like those guys. And when I finished my school, unfortunately, I didn't go for varsities and stuff, but I started working at a mine for 2 years.
What kind of mine?
It was a gold mine somewhere in South Africa.
What was that like?
I felt like, I didn't belong there. I felt like I was suffocating, but because I had no choice, so I worked for 2 years. But then luckily, the late Anton Mzimba, he was working at Timbavati Private Nature Reserve by then when I was working at a mine. So it came a time where they retrenched us. Then I was part of a team that were retrenched. Then Anton gave me a call to say that, yeah, here they're looking for people to fix roads and deal with erosion controls and stuff. Then I was quick to jump. And by that time, back at the mine, they were giving me calls to say that I need to come back. But I never went back. I said that no, rather I go to Timbavati, and mines pays much better than conservation. But I chose conservation without knowing that that's where I belong. So I went to Timbavati and I started fixing roads and fences and all that for 2 years. And back then, we were earning. It wasn't enough because you will never get what you say it's enough. But I felt very much at home when I met at Timbavati than being at a mine. So in 2009, they were looking for rangers at Timbavati because they had a smallest team, but they wanted to add few. Then I was lucky to have been one of the guys who were chosen to do the selection. That very strenuous exercise that if you have watched the movie, you might have seen.
Oh, yeah.
So I've went through that, and the training to me, I felt it like as it's nothing, and I know the reason why. When I finished on the last day, I felt like I'm about to go to do the selection process because it's something that I wanted to do from the early age. So it's the reason why when I got that opportunity, I made sure that this is what I wanted to be. I've got to make use of this opportunity, and I made it through, went for my basic. So I started in 2009, went for my basic to be a qualified field ranger since 2009 up until today. And I was lucky to be working all those years under the leadership of the late Anton Mzimba.
This show is sponsored by BetterHelp. You guys who listen to the show a lot know I talk all the time about how cluttered my mind gets with all kinds of thoughts, and I'm sure many of you out there who have busy lives yourselves can certainly relate to that. So for me, writing down these thoughts a couple times a week in a journal is certainly a big help, and in the past, things like therapy have been an enormous help. So if you can relate to that and you're thinking about starting therapy, give BetterHelp a try. BetterHelp is a great resource because it's entirely online and designed to be convenient, flexible, and suited to your schedule. All you have to do is fill out a brief questionnaire through BetterHelp to get matched with a licensed therapist, and you can switch therapists at any time in the future for no additional charge. In this cluttered world we live in, you never want to forget to prioritize your own mental health, and you can do that now with BetterHelp. So go visit betterhelp.com/Julian to get 10% off your first month today. That's BetterHelp, BetterHelp.com/Julian for 10% off your first month today. This link is going to be in my description below, and I hope all of you out there who are in need of someone to talk to consider using this great resource at BetterHelp. It's amazing, and we're gonna dig into all that today because I know there's a lot that happens in those 15 years, but I want to keep this straight as well. So, I mean, it is a math game on these things, right? Like we can see where the species numbers were in, say, 1900 and then where they got to by, say, like 2000. And there are, like, you know, I don't want to be totally alarmist on everything. There are some good trends thanks to guys like you who are out there, one, telling the story, and two, on the ground actually, one actually on the ground doing it, and two, telling the story about it. But you see how we've started to turn around the rhino population, which was getting damn near where they're going to declare them extinct. We actually have, I want to remember this offhand, I want to say we're up to like 460,000 elephants or something in Africa now, which it's not at the 1,000,002 it used to be, but it's not at the 250 that it got down to. So there are some good trends. But John, I think a really good way to go through this that, you know, has been great when Ryan's been in here, but you're coming at it from another perspective, and Orlat, add whatever you would like to this, is to explain where a lot of these poachers are coming from, because there seems to be a misconception that, oh, it's just like the locals getting a payday. I guess like once in a while it's that, but it seems to be like literally like some of the terror groups are coming in and taking contracts from other countries to, you know, then fund their terror and get the products to other countries.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's a little bit different in every country, but you know, I guess I can give some context because this film specifically is focused on the rhino poaching situation. But you know, as you know, there's many different species that are being poached and endangered. But in terms of South Africa and rhinos, I mean, like you said, I think rhinos somewhere 17th, 18th century. I think they estimate around 500,000 at one time. So that was probably the maximum. And now they're down to about 27,000 worldwide. I think in terms of the black and white rhinos, which are in South Africa and mostly African rhinos, it's somewhere 15, 16,000 in that range. I'm probably off a little bit. But if you go to Asia, where there's the Javan and Sumatran rhinos, I think both of them are well under 100. So they're very close to losing those species completely. And the driver for most of the rhino poaching is the horn. That's what is under demand by mostly China and Vietnam,
which is bullshit.
Yeah, and it's they're using it for traditional medicine. Is kind of originally what it was being used for, but
it's a toenail.
Yeah, it's essentially hair. It's keratin, so it's like your toenail, your hair. It has a root and it grows, and we can get into it. But I mean, as one of the preventative measures, they're cutting the horns off now, without killing the rhinos, so that it de-incentivizes the poachers.
But that's also a huge problem because it affects the mating and therefore the evolution.
I think it's still early days to know how much it's affecting it, but I think they're finding more and more that it's changing things, and you know, it sucks to have to go out and see these wild creatures who are somewhat mutilated because we're trying to save them from being poached to death, poached to extinction. But yeah, so that demand is coming from Asia for the most part, and it's, you know, started out as traditional medicine. Now it's being used as an investment. You know, they're carving it into libation cups. These things of
libation cups.
Yeah, it's like, you know, special ritual cups that you can drink out of, or an ornament that you can put on a shelf. They'll carve art into it, which just enhances the end price that you can get for this horn, and you sell it as an investment almost. So I think I have a podcast that's kind of helping elevate this story called the Rhino Man podcast, and I've interviewed a lot of people outside of the film side of it, and what I keep hearing is, and I just want to say I'm a filmmaker and I kind of got into this and I've learned as I've gone, so I'm not really coming in as a conservationist or a biologist or something like that, so I might be off on certain things. But this is just from all the conversations I've had, especially somewhere around 2008, that part of Asia really elevated economically, which created more of a middle class that had money to spend. And so, there was always certain demands for these different animal products over the years, but now all of a sudden you have these huge populations that have the financial ability to purchase it. So it just, the demand skyrocketed. And because of that, the pressure on the rhinos, elephants, other species in Africa, the poaching pressure has really gone up. So I think you saw a lot of these animals being poached more Central, Eastern Africa, and then slowly kind of made their way down. And I think a part of that was because of the stability in different countries over the years. And South Africa being probably one of the more stable ones, they were the last one to get hit. So a lot of these rangers like Orlat were being trained even prior to 2008 when the poaching crisis started to take off. And a part of that was anticipating this poaching war coming to them. And so it's a mix of that demand, but then you have a place like Kruger National Park, which is about 2 million hectares, 4 million acres, this huge piece of land
in South Africa
that rangers are protecting. And along that border, there's close to 4 million people, which is a huge population. And poverty is very high. Unemployment is near 50%. So there's just not that many opportunities. I mean, like Orlat kind of mentioned, you can get jobs in the mines, but a lot of these kids, when they're getting ready to start earning, don't have opportunities for that. So these poaching syndicates prey on people that don't have opportunities, maybe have financial problems, and they try to start incentivizing them with, if you give us a little bit of information, we'll throw a few dollars your way, or if you go out there and help us poach and carry the horn out, you'll get some money. And so they hook people into it, and then even if they decide that this isn't what they want to do, then they start putting pressure in the other direction, saying, if you're not going to do this for us, we'll kill your family, we'll kill you, we'll take you out of the system. And it becomes really tough to fight this battle when you've got that many people being influenced by essentially a cartel system full of corruption on the outside, with lots of money to spend. It really makes it difficult for rangers like Orlat to fight.
Orlat, how many... It's kind of hard to answer this question, but do you view the people who maybe like not even just do the poaching but support the poaching from the native community as like a major minority? As in, do most people, let me ask that better, do most people, native South Africans, think that this is terrible, the poaching, and they want to protect it? Protect the creatures?
I think most of the people in South Africa, they felt like, there was a boundary between them and these animals. Like they felt like the animals doesn't belong, they're not owning them. So they didn't care much about protecting them. Hence, when they were approached, then they were quick to respond to say that, okay, we're going to do it. Because they felt like, it doesn't belong to them and, they're not benefiting from them. Hence, they're just hearing that there is rhinos and elephants. They haven't seen them. So I remember there was a saying that we will hunt these rhinos up until there is no more, because they felt like it belongs to somebody else.
Yes.
And because they're not benefiting from that, so there is no way they can try and save them. Rather, they make money out of those because, it's some kind of a way of making money or benefiting from those, I think. And that's where the problem started. You get these local communities, starting to flock in numbers. And now you're dealing with people that they know you and you know them. And that's where the threats comes in. Because you're coming from that local community and now you sort of like being a stumbling block between them and the wildlife or the animals that they're targeting. So they go as far as targeting you even when you're outside of work, because they feel like you are that barrier in between. You are that bulletproof of the animals that they want. So, and very often you get life threats either for you or for your family members, that if you keep on doing what you're doing, then this is what's going to happen.
Can I add a little more context to that? Because so I mentioned the levels of unemployment with people living near these national parks, and part of that is this. It's a bit of a historical, overlay of what the results of the apartheid South Africa was. So during that time, most of these black communities were moved out of these national parks and put into more centralized communities, and their families were split up. I mean, Orlat, you could probably talk a lot better to this than I can, but now that these reserves have been made, a lot of tourists are coming in, bringing a lot of money, but a lot of that money is going to either white landowners or even international landowners. So if you're living on the border of these fences in these communities and you're not really getting access to see the wildlife, but also all of these people from either outside of the country or who are white and you're not, are making all of this money off of it, and you're not seeing any benefits, you're not getting to experience the wildlife, what incentive is there for you to help? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
To stop the poaching. So as Orlat was saying, a lot of these people are like, well, we're not benefiting from it. We're not getting to use it. Traditionally, we used to live in these areas so we could hunt the wildlife and eat it, cook with it, use it for different things. And now we're not allowed to, and we can't make any money off it. That's a huge problem. So it's, between the financial issues that people are struggling with, that's one thing, but then also just not having the access or ownership to, for the wildlife in those spaces. So, I mean, that's a big part of what our organization, Global Conservation Corps, is focused on now, and we can talk about that a little bit later, inspired by Anton, actually, our main ranger in the film. But unless you're looking towards that long-term vision of changing the way people are getting access and benefiting from those areas, it's going to be a constant battle, and you're just going to be buying time with rangers on the ground trying to protect this wildlife. And so they're doing incredibly important work that's extremely dangerous right now, but we need to do more to support that work by creating that access and benefit to these communities so that they're not just on the fence kind of looking at it like, oh, there's a wall here, someone else has it.
Well, you also have the issue that, I mean, you guys were highlighting it, how dangerous it is to people and their families, where these guys will come and threaten your family. We'll get to, I mean, what happened to Anton's a perfect example of that, unfortunately. But you want to talk about having no morals. They don't care. They will do what they do. And so it has created, naturally and understandably, a culture of fear among many of the communities just getting involved in any of it at all, because they don't want people coming after them. And I think one of the red flag things that you pointed out in your documentary is that the Dutch couple who's training everybody there, what are their names?
Ruben and Marianne.
Okay,
yeah.
So they were talking about how the level of candidate that they used to get trying out for this in 2008, they had way more to choose from and higher level candidates because more people wanted to do it. And now that the poaching wars have happened and people have seen the death and destruction, fewer people want to do it. And so the talent level has dwindled. So when they put the people through this, I'm just going to keep calling it like their buds, like training, which is pretty intense stuff, fewer guys are making it. Is there a way to turn that around? Maybe the better question is, where are the police and where's the government on this to help shut this stuff down?
Yeah, do you want to take that, Orlat? I could always add more, but
I will take the training part. Maybe John, you can go on with the government and the police.
Okay.
So what happened is back then, like as John said, people were living in those areas where they were asked to move out, and they started putting up fences in a way of trying to save those wildlife, because we as humans, we've got this tendency that if we have access to something, then we just gonna misuse it and we finish it. And back then, we had people, those that knew what a rhino is and what they had interest. It's the reason why we had good quality rangers like Anton, because they were exposed to such. And I was lucky to have visited my granny and, a couple of guys. But because of those fences, people started losing interest. And because they didn't have access to those. And, if you go to schools and you ask the kids, when you grow up, what do you want to be? They will always be like, I want to be a doctor. I want to be a lawyer. I want to be, because now they feel excluded. They can't talk more about conservation because they've got no idea what a rhino is, what an elephant is, what a rhino is. So, and because of that, you're most likely to find people, those who were, when they were at school, they wanted to do a certain careers and they failed. Now you've got this opportunity here, you're looking for rangers, and people be like, let me go and give it a try. It's not something that it's coming from within, but you're just seeing a gap and want to give it a try. And you might find that some, because of the training, they made it a little bit difficult to can get the right people on the ground. But because people are stranded out there looking for work and they can't, they try and make sure that they cope with that exercise up until to the end. But you find that that person, he wasn't born to be a ranger. It was something else. But because it didn't work out, now there is a gap here. Then they come in and start being working as a ranger. And I want to put it on record that it's something that made it a little bit worse, because we had people, those who were not born to be rangers, but we had them on the system because they were looking for work and they couldn't find it, and there was a gap. We were looking for rangers, and they often get to 10 because that wasn't their passion. So they were easy to be turned, because we sort of like took poachers out and we put them into the system, and they get to operate and wearing that name of being a ranger, but they're not rangers. Hence, you might have heard we had a few cases where rangers were arrested.
Yeah, yes, corruption, right.
We will say rangers were arrested, but those were not rangers. We just took, without knowing, we just took poachers out from the communities and put them into the system. And it was all because of work challenges that people are facing out there, because, unemployment rate, it's very high.
Yeah.
And, with corruption, they're not for the purpose of protecting, but they were looking for money. And obviously, if they're getting approached, then they will be quick to say that, okay, I will do it, and of which they're doing it.
What about not just corruption, but like a layer farther where guys join and become rangers for the right reasons? They're doing it, they're good at their job, and then someone comes, puts a gun in their family's face and says, you're going to give me the information I need and turn on your ranger friends, or I'm going to kill all you motherfuckers. Like, does that happen too? Where rangers get turned not through monetary means, but through like literal horrible blackmail?
Yes, it does happen like that, because what they do is they will approach you in a good-mannered way. But if you say no, obviously you know that these are bad guys. Obviously you might go and report such. Then that's where the threats comes in, to say that, okay, either you work with us or you're gone, because they know that you're going to expose them. So they'll put pressure on you to say that this is what we want you to do, or else this is what's going to happen. And there is a few of those that did it because of the pressure, wanting to save their families. Because these guys, they keep their promises. If they say that this is what we're going to do, and they're going to do it. So some they're doing it under pressure, but some they're doing it because they want money.
Have you had friends who served in various capacities as rangers who ended up turning the wrong way?
Yes, we had a couple of rangers at Timbavati, those who, they were good rangers, but somehow they've turned into something else, and we started losing rhinos, but yeah, it was because they were approached and they fell for it. They said that, okay, no, it's fine. They started helping poachers, and you could see by how they were operating that poachers come to just walk from wherever to come and shoot a rhino here and out without us picking up. It's because they've got information of whereabouts and all that. Yeah,
absolutely.
Yeah.
Now,
they make
John,
it.
Oh yeah, go ahead.
I was just gonna say they make it easy because all they say is all you have to do. It's like it's not a big deal. You just tell us when your patrol's going through or let us know where the rhino is. So it seems very low.
You don't have
low
to
pressure.
see the evil.
Yeah, exactly. And then we'll give you a little bit of money, and that's how a lot of times guys start going in and more, and then next thing you know, you're pretty much working full time for these poaching syndicates.
Yeah, the stakes in this are so high because you're talking about there's a death on the other end of it. It reminds me in a way of a much harder scenario than like my friend Paul Rosalie deals with in the Amazon, where he's dealing with the same thing, but he's dealing with guys who are cutting down trees to make a living, and he goes and makes friends with them. And all it is to them is they're trying to make a living. It's not like they're the loggers. I'm not talking about the gold miners for people out there checking this. Like the loggers, it's not sinister. They're being paid by wherever countries are paying them to do it, but like they're making a living. And all Paul has to do is say, how much do you make? If we could come up and pay you a little more, would you join us? And they're like, yeah, but in this case, when guys are making a living protecting the animals and you're dealing with the actual like mafia on the other side of it, who's got a gun on the other end and says they're going to pay you, and then an animal dies. It's not like, you lose an acre of trees, you can figure that out. You lose 11,000 acres, that's a problem. But like, you lose every rhino we lose with the gestation periods that these things have, it's hard. And it's like you get closer and closer to that, wherever that D-Day clock is, and it's a problem. But the second part of my question you were going to, I believe, answer, John, which had to do with where is the government and law enforcement in this stuff and helping to crack down on these guys who are running these syndicates.
Yeah, I mean, unfortunately, because of these incentives and the size of these syndicates, there's so many corrupt people at every level. I mean, Orlat was just talking about rangers, and often, I think it was maybe your warden, Mr. Pierce, he was talking about working at Sabi, which is another game reserve, and I think one of their best rangers there, I don't know when this was, but I just remember him telling me this story, one of their best rangers there ended up turning and becoming a poacher, and I think he ended up getting arrested and came back in and poached multiple times, and they just kept catching him. And that, it's just heartbreaking, I think, as someone that's like, this is someone who's on your team, someone who has, all these amazing talent and is kind of working their way up the chain. And then to find out that they end up turning and trying to make an extra buck by poaching, it's pretty heartbreaking. So
Of course.
The corruption isn't just there, but it's also in the government, in other aspects of law enforcement.
Guys, if you're not following me on Instagram, you can get me at Julian Dorey Podcast or also on my personal page at Julian D. Dorey. Those links are in the description below. You can also follow me on X at Julian D. Dorey. That link is in the description below. And as always, please smash that subscribe button if you haven't already and hit that like button on the video. It is a huge, huge help. I appreciate all of you who have been subbing and all of you who are liking all these videos. Thank you.
There's a guy that I can't remember his name now. Maybe you'll remember it, Orlat. But he was basically being groomed to take over all of the rangers at Kruger National Park. He was, I think, a regional ranger at the time, which there's 4 regions. It's kind of broken up into 4 regions, and then within those, there's these smaller sections, and then there's the smaller units within those. But he was a regional ranger getting ready to be the top ranger. And one of his rangers that was directly under him had suspected that something was not right. These guys would get sent off in a certain area to patrol, and then a rhino would be poached kind of somewhere else. And I don't know exactly how he realized something was happening, but he suspected that his boss, this regional ranger, was maybe up to no good. So I think what happened was one day he basically told these guys to go off somewhere else, and then they were moving in to do something a little nefarious. And this guy, he was like, you know what? Let's take the team and just kind of circle back around and see what's going on over here. So they basically walked out of the bush and caught him red-handed, shot a rhino. There was I believe it was a wildlife vet.
He did it.
Yeah, there was a wildlife vet with them so that they could, I think what they were doing was like faking that it was tranked, maybe. And then they would cut the horn off, get out of there, hide it, and then, sell it off down the line. So he basically walked out with the team and was like, hey, what's going on here? And they tried to play it off like, oh no, it's
Oh my
misunderstanding.
God.
And
He was going to be the top dog.
yeah, he was going to be the top dog. So if that guy who's been groomed for years to take over could be corrupted, it's just, I don't know. I don't know how you do it, Orlat, knowing that's, these guys that are working with you could turn. But it's not an easy situation. I mean, it's very similar in my mind to what's going on in Mexico with the narco trafficking and that side of things,
That's what
where
it feels like.
government officials are being influenced, law enforcement's being influenced at every level. So it just makes it really tough. And I think that's what makes it even more important, that we need to really work with the youth and kind of change that narrative for the future generations, because, like you were saying, who wants to be a ranger if you're going to get put in this situation where, like Anton, your life is going to be threatened and, you're not making that much money. Maybe you don't really care that much about the wildlife. So it's going to be so much easier to shift you in the wrong direction. So a lot of what we're focused on now is, getting these kids out into the reserves for the first time. Like 4 out of 5 kids around Kruger National Park have not seen wildlife, even though or seen a rhino or a lion, even though they live right there. Yeah. So it's like, that blew my mind when I got involved on this project and started learning about the situation, because it's so complex. I mean, there's so many levels to it. But just the fact that people that are living right there haven't seen a rhino, haven't seen a lion, haven't seen an elephant in person. And so taking kids out on their first game drive is a pretty incredible experience, where you see their faces light up and they're like, oh,
That's
wow,
awesome.
This is so cool. So it's like, you're not going to protect something if you don't see it and know it and love it. And that's really where I think it starts.
Yeah, when I was down in the Amazon, I was there with my friend Trevor Little, who is the ground commander every day for VetPaw in Africa. And, that was one of the things he was talking about, is how special it is to bring anyone out there, right? And it's crazy to him that, like you were just pointing out, I didn't realize it was that many, though, 4 and 5, that so many people who live within the country haven't even had a chance to see this stuff. And so, when they can help make that happen, that's really cool. But also on a global scale, I mean, we know how things work. You're a documentary filmmaker. You try to make the film so that you can bring it home for people to see it, because it's so important to see. But it's like, if something's not in our backyard, same deal. Like, see no evil, hear no evil. Someone else will figure it out. And, one of the things Trevor, and I know Ryan's talked about this a ton, that's huge, is trying to figure out how to get people from all over the world more access to be able to come and see this, to feel like they have a sense of duty to help support guys like Orlat and Timbavati to do what you do. And also, in the process, maybe, not maybe, but make more financial incentives so that rangers who join are in a better position financially. Now, that doesn't stop the man in a black hat from coming to your door with a gun and putting it to your family's face. That's another issue. But you know what I mean? If you could at least start with some of the economic incentives and make it a little bit more of a world project, I guess that's what the royal family's trying to do, which is pretty cool. I think that would make a huge difference.
Yeah, for sure. And I mean, you're right. The incentives for the rangers to do their job and support their families are not very good. And that's a huge problem. It's kind of a part of our social impact campaign, is working with partners like the Thin Green Line Foundation and the International Ranger Federation, Game Rangers Association Africa, to help influence governments on a bigger level so that they see the value of rangers and put them more online with other frontline workers like police and fire, military, because they're doing that kind of work, but they're oftentimes not really getting paid well, don't have any kind of health insurance, life insurance. Oftentimes they don't really have good boots or gear or anything like that. The training is low. So we really need to be taking better care of them if we expect them to go out there, risk their lives for not only just wildlife in that space, but I mean, everything is interconnected. So we're benefiting from what Orlat's doing in South Africa, protecting the wildlife there. Here, just like, people in the jungle keepers in the Amazon.
That's right.
I mean, the Amazon is like the lungs of our planet.
Yes.
So, it is maybe not in our backyard and we can't really see it, but it's affecting us whether we realize it or not. So we need to find ways to get people involved, come to the Timbavati, meet the rangers. I mean, when you meet Orlat or Leda, who's operating the cameras right now,
doing an amazing job. I'm like watching the red light up over here. You're doing an incredible job, so thank you.
But yeah, it really connects you more to the story. And I encourage people, if you go on like a safari or something and you see a ranger, like go up to them and say, hi, thank you for what you're doing. Thank you for your service. We say that to our military, but these men and women are risking their lives the same for all of our benefit by protecting these ecosystems. So super important.
Can you cut, I know you have the mouse there on the documentary. Can you cut, I'm trying to remember what that time said. I think it was 102:00, where they're walking out during the day. I want people to see this, what can just happen on there. So
which part are you thinking?
1 hour and 2 minutes. Cut to 102.
I'm a little blind, so.
It says 108, 107, 102, a little farther. All right, yeah. Cut right here, and then let me turn this mic on. So later, this is the part we'll hit camera. You're on it. There you go. Look at you, head of the game. You gotta teach Alessi how to do some of that. He's gonna kill me for saying. Alessi does an amazing job.
You want me to start here?
Yeah, let's play it right
there.
there.
So this is Anton kind of leaving his home after a long deployment, and we'll let you see how it develops here.
So I'm ready to see him crying again when I come back home.
I think it's fast speed right now.
Yep.
Basically, we are responding to an incident where one of our lodges has reported a single gunshot fired. So we are now responding to the area. We already deployed one patrol. In the meantime, they have already started tracking.
That's all out there.
Badass. You guys are working in the middle of the night a lot of the times, too.
Yeah.
Now, this is a full moon night, which is a dangerous poaching night, right? Because it's lit.
Yeah, traditionally, I think in the early days, the full moon, that's when the poachers went out. But they start changing their tactics as the rangers change tactics.
It's going to turn to daybreak. So now, like, the sun's up, it should be like, okay, maybe we could relax. Nope. Is that you, Orlat?
Yes.
Yeah,
That's me. Yeah. I remember this day like as in yesterday.
All right, so for people listening, they're looking through the brush right now. I'm trying not to talk because I want people to enjoy this who are watching.
In the morning, these guys were shooting back at us. I don't know what it was, a revolver or 9mm. They were shooting at us. So I was, even now, I'm still nervous, For me, I'm still thirsty. This is not enough for me. So
they got them. The guys are in the back.
Yeah.
They got nothing to say. They say. All right, let's pause it right there. I wanted people to see this. Boom. All right, so, and great aim, by the way. I know it's a little awkward over there. We're doing this live today, people. But that's so intense because, like, you guys are walking on this beautiful, for people who didn't get to see that and we're just listening, you're walking on this beautiful open day. You just got through a full night moon, no problems. And then what happened? Did these guys, they started shooting first? They saw you?
Yes. Well, what happened that day, we had a report that there was a fence cut at night. There was an alarm. So we had to respond to that, bearing in mind that we were not supposed to use lights because that was gonna give away our presence, that we're responding to that. So we had to move silently in the darkness, hoping that we will bump into them, because what they do is they often walk in those animal paths at night. And so you will have seen on that clip, we were looking, hoping to see the tracks. But unfortunately, we didn't see anything. And we couldn't go back to the base because the guys were out there. So we had to be out, on a listening post, that if ever a gunshot goes off, then we know where the guys are, so that we can quickly respond to that. And nothing happened at night, which means the guys didn't get the rhinos. They were walking on that darkness, and we were out there without them knowing. And early in the morning, we picked up tracks, and as we were walking, the guys saw us because we were staring at the tracks while scanning around, and they happened to see us. Then they started shooting at us, and luckily we dived and we started shooting back at them, and we ended up arresting them. And it was a scary, feeling to be shot at, but it's something that we expected. We anticipated that this is what's going to happen, because these guys, whenever they see us, they won't just smile at us and say that we're here. They will fight, and we've got to make sure that we survive in those kind of attacks, which demands a lot of training and sacrifices, because now we're talking about life and death situation. And with the training that we received, we were able to survive on that attack, and we arrested them, and as you saw on that clip. So it's not something simple, to track these guys up until you find them, or to be a ranger, if I may call it that way, because you know that when you're out there, you always exposed to death, either from the animals that you're trying to protect or from these well-armed poachers. So, but we always going out there and coming back with the training that we have received. And because what's going on in our minds is that if we're not there, if we're not doing it, then who is going to do it? It can only be us doing it. And it's the reason why the rangers, where there is a gunshot, that's where we want to go. You might have seen there, it was in the darkness. We couldn't see them, but we were waiting for them, that if ever they fire a shot, then they've given us their position, and that's where we're quickly going to go.
Now, so it was just you and Anton out there that day when they shot?
Yes, affirmative, yeah.
And there were two of them, is that correct, total?
Yeah, there were 3 of them.
So one of them got away?
Yes, one escaped under arrest.
Question though, imagine there's even just 2 of them for a second, not even 3, and there's 2 of you, and you're out in the middle of the bush, out in the middle of nowhere for all intents and purposes, and they're armed and you're armed. How did you arrest them?
It goes with the training that we have received. So we're more advanced to what these guys are having. But even though, each and every day they're trying and, to be better than yesterday. But for us, because we have been doing it for a little while, and it's something that we've always wanted to do. It looks easy, but it's not something easy. I can tell you, it's very difficult, and especially if somebody is firing at you.
I didn't think it was easy. Just to be clear,
you've
just
got to
put that out there.
you've got to be that brave. I mean, to can respond to such situation. Otherwise, if you're not strong enough, you're most likely to turn away or maybe throw away your rifle and start running for your life. But instead, we're going to where the attack is coming from. So it's all in your mind. If you have decided that this is what I'm going to do, and you can do it. You can do it without you knowing or without you realizing how difficult it is. Only after, then you will question yourself, how did that happen? How did we do it? But when you are in the middle of it, then your body, the only thing that you can do is to control your body, and you, once you have decided that this is what I'm doing, and you do it. And it looks easy, but yeah, I can tell you
it does not look easy at all. I just want to be very clear about that. It looks very complicated, and I mean, actually, my next question is going to make it sound even way harder. But how much land at Timbavati, in particularly, how much land is your team able to cover? Like, how much are you responsible for being a ranger on, approximately?
Timbavati, it's huge, and we've got a very limited manpower in there, but
what is it, 54,000 hectares?
54,000 hectares.
All right, what is that?
It's about over 100,000 acres.
That's a lot.
And the team, I think the team there is varied between like 20 and 40, depending on what year and how many. So
we got a phrase here in America called "needle in a haystack."
Yeah, exactly.
That's what you're doing.
I mean, Kruger National Park is 4 million acres, and they have, I think, 700 rangers right now. I don't know if that's right. So, and you can't have them all on duty at the same time. People have to go home, go on leave.
Yeah.
And so, you think about that, you're rotating them, and exactly, it's like needle in a haystack. To run into these poachers is really difficult. So you're really, you're looking for information, you're looking for a break in the fence, you're looking for footprints, trying to catch somebody gunshot. But it's extremely difficult to protect these giant spaces, and that's why, I mean, I think Kruger National Park in the last 10, 12 years has lost over 10,000 rhinos with that Ranger Corps trying to do the work. And then you throw corruption in there and all these other things. It's extremely difficult. And I mean, I think this is why we need other strategies and other ways to attack this problem than just the Rangers, because they can buy us time, they can slow things down, and we absolutely need them. I think sometimes
it's an impossible job, though.
Yeah, but sometimes you hear people say, we should just direct all of that funding to these other projects that are more long-term, which we definitely need. But if you take the Rangers out of there, if you take the training that Orlat's gotten out of there, you take the guns out of there, then this wildlife is going to be gone within a few weeks or months. If everyone just walked off, how long do you think it would take?
It'd be fishing in a barrel with dynamite.
Yeah, exactly. So it's not, I don't think it's either or. We need the Rangers. We need them well trained and equipped. We need more. I mean, one of the big goals, there's a UN global initiative to protect 30% of the planet by 2030. And to do that, we need about 1.25 million Rangers to effectively manage that amount of land.
Oh, so this is if I'm understanding correctly, this is specifically for conservation as it pertains to like physical species.
Yeah, and just like a land mass. So like 30% of the planet. If we were protecting that amount, including oceans, we would need about 1.25 million Rangers. And right now, I think we have between 250 and 300,000.
Oh, so we got.
And we want to add more land to the percentage that we're currently protecting, and we don't even have enough Rangers to effectively manage that. So huge problem to develop that next generation and really create the incentives and the training and all of these things to make it a job that people want to do, are attracted to, and then also can do it efficiently and as safely as possible.
Well, when I was spending time with Trevor down there in South America, I got to get up to date on all the amazing technology they are now using to help do their job, because it's just like you. Obviously, they're protecting a whole lot of land as well. Needle in a haystack, same deal. It's an incredibly difficult job. But at Timbavati, do you guys are you utilizing drones or other technology like that to help you do what you do? Or if not, like, what do you guys need to be able to get those resources, and how can we help, like the audience?
Yeah, it's a good one. Technology, it's something that we will have to have, especially drones and some other equipments, because you will see on this clip, there was a false alarm where one of the landowners reported it sounded like as a gunshot, but it wasn't. Now, come to think of the deployment, you take rangers from where you thought something was going to happen. Now you send them to where you feel like something has happened, only to find that it's elephants. So, but if you had a drone, you will just fly a drone and scan the area, and okay, this is elephants activities, and it saves you time. And rather than driving up and down, you sort of like changing the whole plan. Now you're focusing on where you believe that something might have happened, only to find that it was elephants. So, but if you have something like drones or camera traps, where you have those cameras where you feel like it's hotspots, you can be able to detect if guys are coming in and all that. That will help a lot. But obviously, you need rangers, because a camera trap can't apprehend. Yes, it can only detect the guys as they walk in.
Soon. They're working on the robots.
We'll have robo-rangers before
now you want rangers to respond to that detection that you might have picked up. And sometimes you find that the guys, by luck, they walk behind the camera trap without them knowing that there is a camera tray. You need rangers to go and cover that area. Mm-hmm. So rangers are always going to be important in this game. But I wanted to go back to what Jonas said, incentivizing, rangers, that boosts their morale, to say that, like we have been doing since. But if that happens, it's sort of like, and plays as an injection to say that, guys, let us do more, because we know that there is a support coming from abroad from what we're doing, and we're not alone in this fight, and there are people watching us, and let us keep on doing what we're doing. Hopefully something is going to happen. This fight, we're going to win it.
Yeah, and it's an uphill battle, unfortunately, as we are pointing out today. But one other thing on the technology before we move off that, do you guys have any tracking devices? Like, do you have any collars, or like they're going to start getting towards chips now as well to put in animals to track them, or you still don't have that as well?
Unfortunately, we don't have them. At Timbavati, we still have a healthy population of rhino, which it was going to make it difficult, to can track each and every rhino movement of where they are. But we believe that if we can get technology that can support us, equipment-wise, then that will be very much helpful for us, to can do much better than we're doing now, even though I understand we're grinding very hard. Because of the manpower that we're having in Timbavati now, we've got to go that extra mile, not only in Timbavati, worldwide, like as John has given us the state. We don't have enough rangers. So those that are on duty now, the work itself demands a lot from them. We've got to push that extra mile, and that makes it difficult for us to can spend time with our families. We've got very limited time, to spend with our families than spending out there, because you feel like
what are your deployments right now, just so people get a sense of how many days you are away from your family?
It's 21 days in, 7 days off, but you sometimes don't even finish that 7 days off, because something is happening back there, and there is always shortage of manpower. You can always go back and assist here and there, because the pressure is there.
I can't remember if it was you or or Anton in the documentary, but there was like a part where one of you was saying goodbye to your little baby son, and you were going for 28.
Anton.
That was Anton at that time. And he's like, in 28 days, I'm going to come back. And like when they're that young, they don't remember shit. So it's like he's going to have to cry again and try to figure out who I am.
Yeah.
That really drove that home for me because, you know, we talk about it here with our military, and it's, I mean, you guys are doing a form of the military over there. You know, you're calling it what it is.
Yeah,
it's a deployment.
Mm-hmm.
That's crazy, man.
Yeah, but it differs. Sometimes you will go 28, sometimes you will go 21. We sort of like changing it because we don't want these guys, to know how we operate the routine. So before they know that you're gonna go after 28, then you at home on 21, so that they don't target you. But if you're gonna stick on 21 or 28, then obviously they will start knowing that when are you gonna be coming home and when are you going out, and all that.
It's like a huge intel game.
Yeah, it's a constant arms race. I mean, you were saying earlier, full moon. They used to call that Poachers moon.
Yeah.
But because the Rangers started to say, oh, hey, most of this poaching's happening when the full moon is, put a little extra effort on those nights, then the poachers changed their tactics and they start going out at different times and avoiding that. So it's always, as soon as there's a new technology, they're trying to combat it, and it's basically an arms race.
Well, it's amazing that you guys are doing it with like no technology on your end. And I know Vetpal's like just getting a lot of that, but that makes such a difference. So I don't know, Prince William, look it up, my guy. I think there's a nice little what's that, the Duchy of Cornwall? Got a little bit of money in that thing. I don't know, my guy. But anyway, so
no, they've been super supportive. I can't say enough good things about.
I can tell. Let me be the asshole podcaster. You guys are on the right side of history here. But the guy we keep talking about today, obviously, is Anton. I mentioned him throughout this conversation. Could we actually start with you on this, John? When was the first time you met him, and what made him different? Because he obviously has turned into this legendary character, but he dedicated his life to this stuff and ended up giving his life for it.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, this is going back to when we were talking about the film and how I got involved. We went on a shoot in 2018. It was a 2-week shoot. We had a little bit of money, used some of the equipment from this production company, and essentially we were going to spend about 5 days following a selection process, which is the one you see in the film, and then another 3-4 days with Anton to kind of flesh out some of his story, because I think at that time we already had like a decent chunk of Anton's story for the film, but we needed more to really create a narrative and see what he's doing out there with his team. So it was the second half of that trip, and I believe Orlat was there, and Ndlovu, who's another amazing ranger at the Timbavati, went out with Anton, and he was just the most generous, kind-hearted, kind of soft-spoken guy that I've ever met, but you could tell within that he had so much passion for protecting the wildlife, rhinos, everything, and he was dedicated. I mean, he was willing to stand in front of a bullet, and he would say that to save a rhino. And so I think, this trip, everyone thinks like Africa, I get to go like on these safaris, see all this incredible wildlife, which I got to do some of that on top of the crazy filming. And to see the wildlife was epic. I mean, getting to see a rhino for the first time, I don't know why I love giraffes, just those long necks, the goofy animals, but love those things.
Cool. Yeah.
And so coming back after this trip, I mean, I think the thing that really stuck with me and also reinforced the direction that we wanted to take this film was meeting Anton and getting to be out there with him and seeing how much he loves for this. Because even if you don't care about conservation, you see what these men and women are doing out there and you connect to their story. It's kind of infectious, and it makes you want to follow your purpose and do your thing and support them and what they're doing. And Anton just had that incredible ability to not only do the work, but to communicate and connect with you on a one-on-one level. And so, yeah, that was the first time I met him. And I think taking that back to Atlanta when we were digging into the film, it just reaffirmed that we didn't want this to be your typical kind of conservation film that's like, oh, here's a topic and here's all these different angles, investigative journalism, which I love some of those films too, but I wanted to really make this about the human aspect of it and trying to get into their lives a bit, and like, seeing him go home and talk about being away from the family and kind of seeing the full human side and that connection between people that are trying to do this type of work. So yeah, he's an amazing human being, and I think he won a Rhino, what did they call it? A Rhino Award back in 2016 for his work, because he was just such an incredible ranger.
Alive. That's good.
Yeah.
Okay.
And first male ranger of the year. Yeah.
Got it.
Yeah. So he was just like, and it wasn't because he wanted to get these awards. He's just so passionate about
Yeah,
it.
he's good at what he did.
He knew like every bird, every tree, all the wildlife. I mean, he could tell, you could drive out there with him and he would just point to things and be like, oh, this is this bird, and it usually comes in this time of year, and that's that kind of tree that they're feeding off of, and it's because this kind of soil. I mean, like the depth of knowledge is insane. He wasn't just a security guard. He cared so much about this place. And he even told me prior to becoming a ranger, he couldn't really speak any English. And he trained with Ruben, who's in the film, doing the ranger selection.
Yeah.
He trained with him originally. So he was starting to teach him English. But he said what really got him over the line was he started becoming obsessed with learning birds and bird calls. And he got this book from someone that was, I think, a student that was studying at the Timbavati. He got their bird book and he started learning all the birds, and it was all in English. So it forced him to learn the English as he was learning the birds.
Wow.
And through that and some work with Ruben, he really started to develop. And I mean, he could speak amazingly well. He would always be like, oh, sorry, it's not great at English. I'm like, Anton, I think you could speak more eloquently than I can. So, but yeah, he was just such an amazing human, dedicated to his work, a great leader. I mean, Orlat can talk to his character and his ability to lead their team in this type of pressure and with these types of consequences. Just being someone that can lead from the front and also do it with such a kind heart. I think, Orlat, you were telling me, like, Anton, he would constantly be forgiving people that were out, either just not doing things right or out to get him. I mean, you could talk about him more than I can since you were so close to him, but yeah, just an amazing human.
Did you grow up with him? Did I hear that at the beginning?
No, not really. I didn't grow up with him. Anthony was a bit older than me. So, yeah, but I spent most of my 15 years, no, well, not 15, sorry, but 14 years of my career under his leadership. So Anthony was that amazing somebody. Not very selfish, but he wanted to see someone progressing in life. So Anthony will share his knowledge to anyone. He wanted to see everybody progressing in life, and he was that type of a person that even if you have done wrong in him, he will still forgive you for that. And he helped a lot of people, even those that they turned against him. He will still see good in them.
You did say he's the guy who came and got you out of the mines and brought you this way.
Yes.
He saw something in you.
Yeah, he really helped a lot of people. So he was having that heart, and I can't. I've been skinning around, and I'm struggling to find somebody like Anton. Anthony was that unique person.
I don't think you really replaced someone like that.
It was difficult for me and for the team as well. I mean, to take what happened. It was a huge loss for us. After so many years, we have been the best at Timbavati because of Anton. His leadership was something else. So even today, he's gone, but we still feel his presence because of what he taught us, what he left with us. I mean, we can still do well as if he's there, because he was that kind of a guy who will show you the right direction, and he always wanted to see us do good, and hence we following those footsteps even today to say that this is what Anton would have wanted to do, and let us do it that way, because he showed us, he paved us the way for us. It's up to us now to finish what he started.
What was the initial thing that got Anton into this? Was this like a childhood endeavor with him and the relationship with the creatures of the land, or was this something he noticed as he got older, that they were being killed and wanted to get involved? What was the story there?
I think it was kind of similar to yours, wasn't it, Orlat? I'm trying to remember because I know he's told me a couple of times, and maybe Leda, she can kind of chime in over this, but I think it was a family relative that got him connected to the Timbavati, possibly, as kind of a work doing similar to what Orlat was doing, building roads, construction within Timbavati, just kind of a labor job. And I think he had always wanted to be a soldier, is what he told me. Like originally he saw, military, the soldiers. And I think he just, that regimented, duty for your country and things like that. So that was something he was always drawn to. And I don't think he was able to go into that line of work. And so when he had this opportunity, he was doing this work at the Timbavati and he started seeing the Rangers. Almost just like what Orlat was saying, it's like, what are these guys doing? Like they're going out there, they've got their guns, they're doing their patrols, very, had a lot of similarities with military. And then there was an opportunity for some new Rangers to come in and they ran a selection course. And I think the warden at the time was like, hey, Anton, like you should try it. If you're interested, you should try out for this selection. And I remember he told me the day that he did his selection, there might have been, I think there were quite a few people, 50, 100 people trying out for this. And it was like a kind of a last minute call. All these people come to the Timbavati. And I forget how many kilometers they had to run, but say it was like 10 kilometers. And they basically just said, all right, you guys are going to get ready, take off, run 10 kilometers. And, I don't know, the first so many people who can make it will kind of move on to the next round. And I think he started running and he just like realized that he was like doing pretty well, and I don't think he finished first, but he was like in the top tier, and a lot of these guys just dropped out, didn't even finish it. And from there he just started doing the selection training and going through it, and it was just something that connected with him, and he was just really good at it. So I think he always had a bit of a heart for nature and wildlife, but it was that drive to become a soldier that got him really connected with wanting to be a ranger. And then as he started developing and taking that training and learning about wildlife and conservation, I think it really kindled something inside of him that was maybe already there. Because like I was saying earlier, I mean, he became so passionate that he learned everything about all the different flora and fauna within the national park. I mean, he could identify any bird, and I think there's close to 1,000 species in southern Africa. So it's like pretty incredible the level of knowledge he had. And so that drive to learn and really work to protect nature became a calling for him. And he even says that in the film, being a ranger is a calling from God for this work that he wanted to do. And you could really, I mean, going back to him and that connection that he had, or that I had with him when I first met him, it's like that passion was evident. It wasn't just the military or soldier side or being a security guard. It was a true passion and dedication to nature and protecting it.
To add on that, John, I think Anton had this in him. It's just that when he said he wanted to be a soldier, he didn't realize that he was meant to be that field ranger. So, and is the reason why he didn't make it in that department, because it wasn't his. But his one was still on its way. And you can see that he excelled on that field ranging department when he started joining. And, in every angle, he was at his best. So you could tell that this thing of him being a soldier at first, it wasn't for him. But he was meant to be that field ranger.
Wow. Well, I don't want to show the way you guys did it in the documentary on this podcast for what happened to him. I want people to go see that, because it's not like you were there when it did, but from an artistic standpoint, that was very moving, how you guys explain what went down. But can we at least tell that story so that people can understand how much this really comes home? Because it made me sick, not just that they killed him, but that He wasn't the only target there. There was like a sadistic manipulation, and then after they were getting him, they weren't stopping.
Yeah, and I mean, a little more background behind it. I got stuck there in 2020 during COVID. I literally landed in South Africa, the last flight out of Atlanta, and the whole idea was, I was gonna work on Rhino Man, try to flesh it out more. And I quit my job. The nonprofit was buying the film out, and then COVID happened and kind of took us down a whole other path. And long story, but I spent 9 months there, and I got to spend a lot of time with Orlat and the team and Anton, and I'd already built a little bit of a connection there through the first shoot and working and staying a little bit in touch, but really got to become close with Anton on this trip, and he was constantly communicating with me when I was back in Atlanta, and I was like updating him on the film. He was telling me what was going on at Timbavati, and I would always be like, "Hey, Anton, can we, some of the guys there, can they come out and re-record something?" I'm like, "Sorry, I'm going to torture you again, the 1 millionth time."
Are you sure you're getting, or it's not you guys? I mean, there was a film guy hitting the ground, hitting the deck when bullets are flying.
Man.
No, you guys are calm as hell. He's like, "Holy shit!"
Yeah, I mean, every time we were out there, and we shot basically a whole other film during 2020 that we put on the side because Rhino Man ended up becoming the main project. But every time I was out with these guys, I was like, "Hey, I'm gonna make you do this again. Can we do this?" And they were like, "No, it's like we want you to be here. We want to get this message out." So that was incredible. But this was 2022, the beginning of 2022, and the film was finally, we were like getting to the point where we had this amazing score that Simone Wilson, this composer, put together for us. We had a color grade. We were finishing up some of the sound mixing. And I was communicating a little bit with Anton because we were getting close. This poster by Marcel van Leeuwen, he created it. And I remember, I think it was pretty close to this time, I sent it to him. I was like, "Hey, here's the poster that we created." Yeah, we got a copy of it right here.
Got it right here. If we can throw the
Pretty
camera
incredible.
on me for 1 second later.
Yeah.
Got it for the cam.
And Marcel, actually, I think he's done some stuff with Vetpa and Ryan. But
That's Anton.
that's Anton in the middle and a couple of black rhinos. And just this, like, I don't know, it just draws you in. And it's got this kind of surrealist look to it. It's incredible art.
Very cool.
But I sent that to Anton. I was like, "Hey, here's the poster. It's finally coming together." And he sent me this awesome message. He's like, "John," he's like, "I'm just so proud to be a part of this project, and this is like incredible." And I forwarded that on to Marcel because he's such an amazing guy too, and him and his wife Ashley, they're pretty incredible and just super supportive of this project.
Wait, which one was Marcel again? I'm sorry.
He's this amazing artist, and so he's the one that created that poster. But I think it was the next message I got from Anton. Like, I'd sent him something and didn't hear anything for a little while. And then all of a sudden he's like, "John," he's like, "Hey, sorry, I didn't get back to you right away. It's been pretty hectic here." He's like, "I actually had a couple of guys recently put a hit out on me." And I think he said, whatever it was, it came to about $1,000 per person for 2 people to take him out, $1,000 US, which is kind of insane. And the first message was like, "It's not that big of a deal. I've gotten threats throughout, it's part of the career. It's part of the job. Threats come, threats go. We do what we can to be safe. We reach out to the police. It's not going to be a huge deal." And I was like, "Oh, all right, but this seems a little sketchy. My fear always as a filmmaker making this film as we released it was that it would increase his visibility and bring more threats upon him. But this was before we were even done. And so I think I got another message maybe a week later, and he was like, "Yeah, these guys are coming after me. I might have to move my family, try to protect everyone, go to the reserve more." And I think at that time I actually reached out to Ruben.
Did he know who they were? Like, did he know who they were with?
He, and Orlat, when he tells his firsthand side of it, I mean, it was definitely instigated by some rangers that, as we were talking earlier, had turned and were giving information and finally gotten rid of these guys. And when they left, they basically threatened Anton's life. And then that's when these threats started coming to him. So, you can't 100% certainty say that, but it's pretty evident that they were involved in some way. So yeah, we just started going back and forth. And I called Ruben up and I was like, "Hey, I don't know if you know this, what's going on with Anton," because Ruben had, he'd worked very closely with Anton over the years. He trained him. Anton worked with Ruben training rangers, so they'd become close friends. And Ruben was like, no, Anton hasn't told me anything about this. He's like, I'll reach out to him and see how things are going, and then also reach out to some other people to see if they can help with this situation. And I think it was about a month or two of getting messages back from Anton, and each time he sent one, it was like escalating to where
is he going back? But he's going back and forth on deployments during this too.
He's out there in the field working,
Yeah.
Doing his job as a ranger, and also trying, being very concerned about his family who's at home when he's out there. And so he basically, the messages just started getting a little bit more tense, a little more, I wouldn't say ever got frantic, but you could definitely tell he was starting to worry. And Anton is never
I
has
could
that
hear
mood.
it on those phone calls you recorded.
And
for
the voice
doc.
messages are in the movie, some of them. And so he started really worrying that his family was going to be in trouble, and he started moving them. He was getting information, and he was able to move them into the reserve. But he's like, we got to live our lives too, and I got to take my kids back to school today, and I'm just afraid that someone's going to kidnap one of them and hold them for ransom or something. So that was really his big fear. And so it kept going on for a little while, and then all of a sudden, Anton was like, "Hey, I think we scared these guys off. We had SAPS, which is the South African Police Services, involved, and I think they put in like an intimidation case, and they thought that they'd scared these guys off and pushed them off, and it got quiet, and so the threats kind of disappeared. And so I think it was about 2 months after that, there was nothing, and it was actually the last message I had with Anton. I think I had the final mixes of the film. It was like the last thing we needed to do was sound mix.
This is 2023?
2022, beginning of July.
Okay.
And I was like, hey, Anton. He's like, I'm almost done with the film. We're getting really close. I really want to come in September. This was July. And, share it with you and the team. I mean, he had seen the film, and we always use it, like consulted with him because we wanted to make sure we're on the right path and honoring what the Rangers are actually doing and wants. But this would be the first time where we'd have like a proper screening, try to get the whole team there, the Rangers. And so I was really looking forward to this. For me, that was like the ultimate, like have him and Ruben there together. And so I was just telling Anton, I was like, I think I'm going to be able to come in September. Like, this would be amazing. Put on a screening, be with you guys. And then Anton sent me a message back, and he's like, hey, John, he's like, I'm really glad you're coming, but I wish it was a little sooner. He's like, in a couple of weeks, it's going to be World Ranger Day on July 31st. And he's like, we're going to throw a party. We're going to braai. We're going to have, some Impala meat. And I just, really wish you were here. But he's like, but yeah, I'll see you when you get here and chat to you soon. And then I think it was maybe a week or so later, I woke up in the morning. For some reason, I had my phone on silent. I think it was like, I was just like mentally not very focused. And so I was like, I'm going to start. This was literally the first day. I was like, I'm just going to have my phone completely off in the mornings. Not going to look at it. I'm going to go work out, get into a good routine, all this stuff. And so I'm like working out. I think it was like 5:30 in the morning. And good friend and roommate at the time, Josh Lumsden, he had been a part of our organization, was the board president of GCC for a while, and knew Anton well too. And so I'm like working out. He's sleeping in the next room. All of a sudden he comes in the room, and his like hair's kind of crazy. His eyes are bloodshot, and just like he was standing there, and it kind of like made me take a step back. I was like, hey man, like what's going on? And in my mind, I was thinking like someone in his family died or something. And he looks at me and he goes, they got him. And I was like, got who? He's like, they got Anton. And I don't know. I think, you just, that the threat is there and this is a possibility, but especially with that couple of months of nothing happening, it just almost kind of went out of my mind. And yeah, I think I was just completely in shock. Like I was just completely emotionless. And I was like, they killed Anton. The hitmen got him. And he's like, yeah, they came to his house and they shot him in front of his family. And
well, didn't they literally, like his little son, who sounded like he was like 4 or 5 years old or something, like they came up nicely to him and asked him where the father was, like with a smile, and then went and got him?
I mean, I think what I've heard from them was, I don't think it was the youngest son, but it was kind of like one of the middle sons.
Oh, he had multiple.
Okay. Yeah. They were asking for water, basically they pretended like their car had broken down and came up with a bottle and said, hey, can you we need some water for our car, like our radiator or something broke. And they went up to Anton, who was, I think, working on his truck at the time, and basically pretended like they needed help. And Anton's just always in that mode of like, hey, how can I help you guys? And I think it had been so long since these threats, not that long, but a couple months. And so it just wasn't even in his mind. He's like, how can I help you? And then they basically pulled out their guns and shot him right there in front of, his kids were there, his wives were there. His wife, Grace, came out, and I think she was right there, and she screamed, and they shot her in the stomach. And then one of his kids tried to get his sidearm and ran off, and they shot at him before taking off. And, yeah, I think when we all heard this, it kind of rocked our worlds. I mean, he'd become a very close friend, and he's just such an amazing human being. And I remember, like, Matt called me shortly after that, Matt Lindenberg, who started this whole thing. And when he called, that's when I think he was already breaking down because he had known for some hours before me. But, yeah, I just completely lost it and was pretty devastated by the whole thing.
And we believe, if I'm understanding correctly from the beginning of you telling this, you think it was actually those two rangers who had gone dark themselves who may have done this, like personally?
I don't think they performed the hit, but instigated it. And maybe, Orlat, you can jump in a little bit with what you're able to say. But
And Orlat, if you wouldn't mind, I didn't want to interrupt the story there because obviously we got to get that and you were explaining it. But in the build-up to this, when Anton is sending those voicemails to John while, he's on and off from deployment, moving his family around and everything, you're with him for a lot of this, obviously. So, number one, were you also getting concerned for your family at the time, and are you concerned now? And number two, by the time it happened, how worried was he still? Even if you had said you thought like, oh, it got quiet, they got scared off. Was he still very fearful of that till the day he died?
I was getting emotional, but yeah, I've got to be up on my game. Yeah. So
take your time,
when this started, in fact, it didn't start 2022. It started way before that. The plan was to get rid of us, the both of us, myself and Anton, out of Timbavati, so that they can operate freely, because they felt like we can be a problem if we dare. They're not going to be able to do what they wanted to do. So they had plan in place to say that, okay, this is what we're going to use against Orlat, this is what we're going to use against Anton, so that we get rid of them here. The first plan was not to kill us, but to make us lose our job, and of which they failed that.
Now, how did they want to do that?
There was a planned grievance that was launched against the both of us, but they first started with me. If they got rid of me, then they were going to come for Anton. They had a couple of charges that they drafted to say that, okay, this is what we're charging him of, and we no longer want to work with him. And you could see that was a sign to say that these guys have completely turned. So, and they even forced all the rangers to say that you sign this grievance form so that it can have that impact. And we went for a couple of hearings because there was nothing evident in what they were charging us with. So they've failed that. And I remember one of the guys told me during the hearing to say that if the company doesn't dismiss me, then they're leaving them with no choice, but they will have to shoot me. So, but yeah, it went on, and they failed to get what they wanted, what they've planned. Their plan didn't work, and they went to this second plan, which was to kill us. Luckily, we had somebody who kept on giving us information to say that, okay, this is what they're planning now. This is what they need to do. So
how did you get that person? Well, if you can't reveal some stuff, don't reveal it. But like, was that someone within that organization who was, an informant for you?
This was an informant for Anton. He was part of our Ranger Corps, then got dismissed because he was involved into this Rhino Poaching. But then because he was very much close to the late Anton Mzimba, he never wanted something to happen to Anton when he heard this, because he was dismissed and these guys later on got dismissed. So they went and formed a group with him. But then he never wanted to be part of this. So he will leak information to say that, okay, this is what they're planning now. This is what's going to happen. And so he was feeding information to Anton with all their plans. And whenever they're having a meeting, he will say that, okay, today they're planning to have a meeting, and he will update after to say that, okay, now their plan is this. So we then went and opened a case of intimidation, and of which we were told that they will investigate.
This is with the local police? Right?
Yes.
Yeah.
They said they will investigate that, and it went quiet, like as John said, for a moment. But then, to my surprise, Anthony was off duty. I've just received a message to say that intimidation case that I've went to open has been withdrawn. But I never went to withdraw it. Then immediately phoned him to say that I'm seeing this withdrawal SMS here. Do you know something about it? And he said that, yeah, if I come back, then we'll have to go and make a follow-up on that. He was at home. We were pretty, well, not relaxed, but we knew that something is boiling. Something might happen. We were always aware of that. And he was supposed to come back on Saturday. Because I was on duty, I had plans to say that, okay, when he comes back, this is what we need to do for the team, and this is what's going to happen and all that. Unfortunately, I just got a phone call. It was on Friday. Late, I remember it was a minute before 7 o'clock, to say that Anton has been shot. I couldn't believe it. I immediately dropped the call. But within few seconds, I had to make a phone call again to somebody else, because I was doubting what I had, only to find that they're confirming that he has been shot. And I knew deep down that I'm next. If they got him, obviously they will get me. So I didn't know what to do by then. But I had to man up and stay strong. I was hoping that they didn't kill him. They might have shot him, but he's not dead. He will get help when they rush him to the hospitals and all that, and of which that's what they tried. But unfortunately, he didn't make it. And that made me lose my mind, because I knew everything that Anton was being given. He will share it with me, that these are the guys, those who are behind the planning, and these are the guys who have been paid to shoot us. I just called the manager to inform him about the situation, and I wanted to drive to Anton's home, but it was dangerous. They never allowed me to do it, because I was their next target. They said that you're not going anywhere. We will try and deal with the situation, and hopefully Anton will make it and we'll get the guys. But yeah, he was gone. He was gone by then. And after that, I had to spend more than 5, if not 6 months without going home to see my family, because it was tense. So we were all hoping that justice is gonna be served, and whoever did it is gonna be found and brought to book. But it never happened, and that made me not to live my normal life again.
Is it because the government, the police did not take the investigation seriously? Maybe there's corruption there. Do we know why? That, I mean, I can hear the emotion raw to this day in your voice, not just for what happened, but for the aftermath and the effect that has on you. And I can't even imagine not being able to see my family for 6-7 months and unknowing when that's going to happen. But do we know why these guys weren't brought to justice to this point?
I could be wrong, but I just feel like they didn't take that intimidation case seriously in the first place. And the fact that I received a withdrawal statement without going to withdraw my statement, it says a lot. Because if I didn't go and withdraw my case, then who might have withdraw it?
Right.
So, yeah, I don't know. I don't know if there was investigation going on that intimidation case. And when this happened, I started doubting to say that my safety at first. Am I safe? If Anton had responded to that situation that it was in front of him, was he not gonna be in chains now?
Wait.
If Anton saw the guys coming, and if it was him who shot them,
Oh, I see what you're saying.
was he not gonna be in chains now, being charged of a murder? Because we felt like this was gonna be, it's something that if ever they took that case seriously, maybe they should have had a starting point to say that, okay, we had a case that was opened of intimidation. We had names of who were behind this, because we gave them almost everything. That this is their plan, this is what's going to happen. It's only 2 guys, those who have been hired to come and shoot. And they had everything before it happened. And it happened exactly like that. But up to this far, nothing, nobody has been caught. So it leaves a lot of loopholes and, questions again to say that am I safe? Is Anton's family safe? Are these guys not going to come back? Because if they've done it and they get away with
That's
it,
right.
what's going to stop them from doing it again?
That was going to be my next question. I think you just answered it though. Like, do you think there's an active potential bounty on your head today?
I know for a fact that these guys are always behind my back. They always are tracking my movement, and it's just a matter of time. They put me down, which is it's fine. Anton didn't deserve what happened to him. Anton never wanted to leave his family like the way they did, but it happened. So if it happens to me, so be it. But I won't stop doing what I'm supposed to do.
That's incredibly brave, man. I mean, I can't imagine being in that position. I get to sit here in a nice chair in Hoboken I don't gotta worry about any of this stuff. But it's, I'm struck sometimes by the incredible bravery of some of the special people who come through this studio and give me their time, sometimes from halfway across the world, and let our listeners and watchers in on the realities that exist out there and that, we take for granted in our very privileged lives here. But, you guys are at the forefront of fighting a battle that many of us around the world, even those who aren't educated that's even going on, not only can appreciate but are rooting for you, because we don't want to see these bad guys take away these species and take away part of the story of this earth. And so to see that passion that rings through, and you sitting here in your uniform saying, if they're coming after me, so be it, 2 years later after they get your best friend and try to get some of his family too, it's incredibly courageous, man. So thank you for what you do.
Yeah, Orlat's another Anton. I mean, these guys shouldn't have to face this kind of threat, especially off duty. And I think, what he's just said really enhances the need for us to find justice for Anton and capture his killers. Like Orlat's saying, it really, we don't know all the facts, but it does sound like there's potentially some corruption within the police force there. And as well as on top of that, they're just under-resourced. So even if there are people trying to do good things, there's a lot of murders in that area. I mean, it's not only wildlife crime related, but there's a lot of stuff happening there because of these different syndicates. And so there's just not enough police to go and dive into all these murder cases. And we've done what we can to keep putting pressure. I think last we heard the case has been moved from the local police to the Hawks, which is kind of like the FBI there. And I think the investigation has been ongoing, but we still haven't arrested any of these killers, and they're still at large. And I mean, like Orlat's saying, when you're out there and you're thinking about someone like Anton getting taken out, Orlat's someone that has the passion and drive and dedication to follow through no matter what the odds. But a lot of Rangers are probably out there pretty scared right now and wondering what's going on. And that's it's exactly what the syndicates want. And so we need to do everything we can to bring justice to Anton and other people like him that have gone through these situations. And I mean, we have a petition out there that we have over 100,000 signatures, but we need real investigative work and people to follow through and catch these guys and prosecute them.
It's pretty amazing you have 100,000 signatures. That's no small feat. That's hard to do. Yeah,
it's still out there, so if you want to go sign it.
I'm trying to put a visual on this, though, as far as, like, see the enemy, what they are exactly. And we've been dancing around some of the places this comes from today, and I want to get to more of that. But you mentioned this particular situation starts with a couple Rangers who had gone bad, left, and were bitter, but it's because they went to the other side. What is the other side? And as an example, you seen the documentary, The Ivory Game? Brilliant documentary. I think it was that one. Hope I'm not mixing it up with another one, but they took down a syndicate that was essentially a mafia family, right? Like, we got the Gambinos, the Genovese here, like they had whatever they were called, and it was all these guys who were doing it. Are there some candidates of some mafia poaching families that these guys were associated with? And since these are poaching families, I don't care about bringing attention to them. Like, who are the candidates?
Yeah, I don't have all the names at hand, but there definitely are bosses. So there's big poaching syndicates, families. There's one that was just killed, last year? Nisi, is that his name? He's a really big poaching syndicate boss. And it's just like, I mean, if you go back to the mafia stories in New York, I mean, these guys are taking each other out, the different families. There's wars within them. And so same thing happened. This guy was, I think, driving to the airport or something, and they pulled up next to him or stopped him and just went up to the car with AKs and shot him up.
Sonny Corleone shit.
Yeah, exactly. Same kind of stuff. So it's just that, but then just, bring overlay that on this South African context with wildlife included. So, I mean, they're doing everything from money heists, like, you're taking a Brinks truck essentially with a bunch of money in it, and they'll just, it's like Heat or something, but way more ragtag and just like jumping out with AKs. And I mean, the police force there too really isn't equipped to fight back on something like that. And it's kind of insane. Like the local communities have kind of taken up arms for themselves. So there's something called like the Farm Watch. And
let's go.
Yeah.
Okay, a little neighborhood watch action.
If something goes down, I think, what was the last year when we were in Jackson Wild, we were talking about basically a cash in transit heist that was going on. And way faster than the police, it got through this WhatsApp channel, the Farm Watch guys, and they came out and literally had a gun battle in the middle of the street to take these guys out. And I think they ended up pretty much winning, right? They arrested some of these guys.
Wow.
They've arrested, it was 13.
13 guys?
Yes.
Yeah, it was a big group. I mean, it's not just like one or two people stopping it. It's like multiple cars, guys getting out with guns. And some of these Farm Watch guys got together and basically took them out and arrested them all. So it's pretty Wild West out there.
I'll
And,
say.
there's drugs, there's murders, there's a lot of stuff going on it's really just super tough for people living in these communities because there's so many amazing humans there just trying to live life, and you've got these huge syndicates battling it out to make money, mostly out of greed, and bringing in people that otherwise would just be trying to make a living, but they might be a little bit stressed for money, and then you get pulled into the system.
Now, Africa's a pretty big continent. There's all different places where these species are. We've been focusing on South Africa, obviously. But how much up close and dirty dealing are you seeing with, say, Boko Haram, Al-Shabab, even ISIS Africa, as far as the poaching that's going on the ground? Or is it more like their money is behind the syndicates who are getting paid?
I can't tell you too many of the details about that. I don't know if Orlat knows much more than I do, but I've been super hyper focused on the South African context, and then outside of that, just like getting the film done.
Right.
But I know there's a lot of crossover between terrorism and gun trafficking. Trying to fund terrorism through wildlife trade. So I don't know how much of that's happening in South Africa in particular, but definitely like these other groups that you're saying. That's exactly what they're doing. They're using ivory and rhino horn to fund their operations as terrorists. And so it's actually kind of, going into how we got connected to Prince William and United for Wildlife.
Yeah, how did that happen?
Yeah, it's all because of Anton, honestly. So we didn't even know about this because I'm sure he told you, but he's such a humble guy that he wasn't like, hey, I talked to Prince William. But 6 months before his death, he had been invited on a call. I think it was like a Microsoft Teams call. Microsoft is developing some kind of AI system to detect rhino horn, ivory, things coming through the airports.
Really?
Yeah, because they
That's
scan all that
cool.
stuff and it can, see different shapes and things like that. So they were presenting this to Prince William and United for Wildlife. And as a part of that presentation, they wanted someone on the ground. And they got connected with Anton. Anton, I think, had like a 15, 20-minute call with Prince William on the other line. And just through that call, he's just such an amazing guy. It's just like that connection, that bond happens, and you hear about the type of work he's doing and what he's facing. And so after he was killed, literally the next morning, Prince William tweeted out, like with his personal signature in his tweet, we need justice for Anton. This just happened. He was murdered. Rangers are facing these kinds of threats all around the world. They need our support. And so we were like, whoa, this is pretty incredible. Like Prince William's taking notice of Anton. This is kind of wild.
Special guy.
Yeah. And so, we weren't really surprised. Anton's just like incredible human. But I think it was 2 or 3 days later, we had someone from the United for Wildlife team, which is his conservation organization. They reached out and they're like, hey, we saw you did a podcast with Anton. Like, can we reshare that? And I was like, yeah, absolutely. But also we've been working on this movie for the last, however many years. And so it kind of like turned into this relationship where we started doing some events with them, got to meet Prince William, spoke about Anton and the Rangers, and through that really starting to learn about United for Wildlife and what they do. And it's a pretty cool organization. They're essentially working to bring together people from finance, transportation, law enforcement, NGOs internationally to share information to be able to take down these crime syndicates. Because, Orlat and the team at the Timbavati are there on the ground. They're on the front lines. These people are coming in trying to kill the wildlife. They're facing the threats on the outside. But this is being funded, from people in Asia, different parts of the world coming, taking this, wildlife products and selling it and processing it. But money has to transfer through banks. Product has to transfer through ports. And so all of these different organizations, banks and airports and all these things, have some piece of the puzzle. And so when someone's caught with a bunch of rhino horn, typically what would happen would be like, oh, we caught someone, we got this much rhino horn, they show the guy, we arrested him, that's it. But what they started to realize is like, we have all this information. If we could share it, we could say, oh, we caught this guy, he was coming from this place. Oh, we have this transaction that actually was coming from this guy too. And then suddenly you can build this pattern of information and start taking down some of these bigger guys out of the syndicates. Right. And so when we connected with them and started telling Anton's story and people within United for Wildlife started hearing this, it was kind of cool to see the power of connecting the two together with the rangers on the ground. Because I think for someone that's maybe behind a computer on a spreadsheet, like flagging different transactions that might be illegal that are connected to wildlife trade, and then seeing the impact that they could actually be having by taking down these syndicates, not only for the wildlife, saving rhinos and whatever, but also the human life that you're saving, someone like Anton, by being able to take out these syndicates before they can put this kind of pressure on these guys. It's been really powerful. So they've gotten behind the story and have been supporting it. Prince William created an introduction for our film for film festivals and special screenings. We had an amazing screening with him and United for Wildlife in London. Oh, you did one
with him?
Yeah, that was epic. Orlat was there and got to speak in front of Prince William, met him.
What's he like? Like when you say you met him, is it more like you're in the line, hello, Prince William, how are you? It's great to meet you. Or is it more like personal, like you're sitting there having a drink, like bullshitting like anyone else?
It wasn't sitting there having a drink. It was that would have been cool. But I probably had like 5 minutes with him, something like that. And in my group, it was Orlat, myself, Leda was there. And he just comes up, he's very genuine. He seems very concerned. He's informed. He's always like straight to the Rangers, like, how are you guys doing? How can we support you? What's your, how's your family? How's Anton's family? Everyone on his team has just been incredible. And I know there's a lot of stuff in media about all the, I don't really follow all that stuff, but
people talk about everything.
Yeah, exactly. But if you're judging someone by the team that they're leading, like, these are some of the most genuine, caring people. They've supported us in so many ways. I can email them in response, and
wow.
And so it's been really cool. We just actually came from a little event, like a steer co-committee with a lot of the United for Wildlife people.
What?
It's just kind of like all the heads of some of the organizations that are trying to steer the United for Wildlife North America chapter, and like what they're doing in the kind of coming years, just kind of setting markers and goals and things like that. And so since we were here, they invited us to come up there, and Orlat and Leda both got to speak and tell their stories. And it's cool because it's like people in banks and airlines and things like that, and they get to hear from the Rangers on the ground and like the effect that they can be having by participating in this collaboration internationally. So yeah, overall it's been a pretty amazing experience. It's all honestly because of Anton's connection and his ability to communicate. We were connected. And it's a crazy thing as like a filmmaker I think that was the toughest thing to grapple with, is like after Anton was killed, like I couldn't even think about it for the first couple months, but it's like, what do we do with this film? Like, what's the right thing to do? Do we just put it out as it is? Do we include Anton's story, and how do you do that in a way that's respectful, but also, does what we're trying to do with this film and bring that awareness and be real? And yeah, it's been a crazy journey to figure that out. But through kind of reconnecting with the team and his family after his murder and spending time with them and getting their blessing, I think that really helped us say, okay, we need to move forward with this. We need to include this. And was probably some of the toughest editing I've ever done in my life,
Oh, I'm
honestly.
sure.
Like his memorial and his death, I think I just cried for like 3 weeks as I edited that footage.
Well, you did it, and I mean this in all the right ways. You did a great job. A couple things there. Number one, this does need to be said. If you look at the history and conservation with the current modern day royal family, they have been huge in that stuff, and they really do care about it for sure. And it seems like, I've never been around them or whatever, but it seems like even though like William and Harry, I guess, don't get along very well now, the two of them, from when I talk to people who have been around them and deal with them on other things, not just this, like they seem to have their mom's touch with stuff, which is really cool from a personal level. And to see William immediately tweet out, let's call it what it is, like very important awareness on Anton's death immediately right after, that's walking the talk, and I want to recognize that. That's really cool. But the second thing here is that I was thinking about this, as someone who's a creative and makes content and stuff. I was thinking about this while I'm watching the documentary, because I saw how many years you put into this, and there's this wild thing that happens where you're telling an amazing story already of somebody, and then the worst thing happens, and nobody wants to see that. But now that it has happened, you now have the responsibility of, in this case, Anton's legacy, and the legacy that Orlat is continuing here, and what these guys are trying to build, to try to get the most attention on this that you can, and do it in a respectful way. And I will tell you, you nailed that, because you could sit there and make it, fucking Hollywood all over the place. You didn't do that. You did it in a really serene, like, no even background music. It was just, as a filmmaker, like, loved how you did that. And it's important that people see that and they have a way to feel that, because we're emotional beings. That's just what ties us together in humanity, and that unfortunately sometimes is the way in to get people's attention. And what you don't want to see is someone like Anton die in vain, in the sense that 10 years from now, the same exact problems that he was facing, we're still facing at the same level. So if we can improve that, you're not going to fix everything overnight. I understand that, but if films like this and getting a story out like this can help improve that, so that 10 years from now, instead of we're here, then his death isn't for nothing. Of course, we'd all love him to be here and continuing to do what he does, but the best way that he can be honored is in the legacy of improving what he spent his life doing.
Yeah, and I think something else too that helped me process this was thinking about Anton and how much time he put into this film as well. I mean, he wouldn't have done this if he didn't want to, or think that it was a good idea. You know what I mean? He wanted to bring that awareness to people around the world. And as a friend and someone that's kind of the arbiter of this legacy through this film, I think I realized, like, okay, we need to do whatever we can to, just like you said, bring that awareness to another level. And unfortunately, sometimes it takes a harsh reality to wake people up and to take action and actually do something about it. And yeah, there's not too many people that are as incredible and loving and caring and dedicated as Anton. And when you see someone like that go all the way for something they believe in, I think it does something to you and makes you want to act.
Yeah. Well, let's we've been going around it today with different things you have to do, but let's take people there onto the ground with what goes into being a ranger, because you guys did an amazing job in this documentary showing some of the training. Actually, could we show some of that real quick?
Yeah.
I think you had some. I think there was at like 36 minutes in. There was some.
The selection was a huge part of this, and here goes I need to update my contacts. Apparently, 36. Let's see. Probably do.
Yeah, right there. Yeah, that stuff was good too. Yeah.
Yeah, here, this is the kind of the beginning of some of the training, and this is Ruben de Kock. He is a legendary ranger trainer who started African Field Ranger Training Services with his wife Marianne, and then another amazing guy that we honored in the film, Martin Mtembu, just a legendary ranger trainer who inspired this whole project when he passed away in a car accident. And
I want to talk about that.
Yeah,
All
we
right.
can go into that too, but this
Let's get into these
a
guys
little
right after.
part of the selection. And what they have to go through.
All right, let's hit that play button. We're good to go. You got it? Almost. There we go. Boom.
And you're going to do push-ups.
This guy's accent kills me. You're going to do push-ups.
From time to time, push-ups also help strengthen the shoulders and that. They must do 35 push-ups to achieve 60%. But if I've got a guy that is bending and breaking his body, if I can see this guy's really pushing hard, I can hear it in his breathing, I can see it in his body. That's what I'm looking for, the guy that will try and go that extra mile. 26. Push. You can do it. Core muscles must be extremely strong. Carrying heavy backpack, you're carrying a firearm, you've got to be able to deploy that firearm very quickly. Your core muscles must be really strong. 75 leg extensions gets you 60% fitness rate. Pull-ups obviously is clearly a strength of the shoulders and arms. Again, you need shoulders and arms to be able to successfully carry that firearm and successfully deploy it when you're in a pressure situation. And that battery test is repeated twice a day, morning and afternoon. On top of that, each day they march 10 kilometers with their sandbag, 4 liters of water and their metal firearm, simulating a day patrolling in the bush. Rangers must be able to walk long distances, and they must be able to persevere, even with the weight on their backs.
Yeah, it's not just torture. There's like a reason behind everything they're doing, you know?
Oh, yeah. Trying to train the best of the best. I get it.
Okay, 4 down. So these guys are just collecting their kit now, and what they're going to do is they're probably going to hand it over to Kobelo, and then they will be taken to the gate. Dropped on the road, they get a taxi, they're off. So that's 4 just starting. So it's not the purpose. It's not to drop them.
It's a summer.
The excuses that they are giving, it's typical of a guy that will just give up. So, check.
All right, we can pause it right there. That's perfect. No bullshit around here. They don't mess around. So
Tough love.
So let's start with this, Orlat. What are, like, we picture Rangers, they have to go out and patrol. They have to be able to, be able to fire upon people, make arrests, and do stuff like that. But when you're starting with someone who's just coming in and you're basically getting them from scratch, what are the main skills outside of just strength and endurance that you really need to beat into them so they can do the job correctly?
You're gonna need to have that interest on wildlife. So if you don't have a background, then it's as good as nothing. Because you can be tough on the exercises, you can excel on that, but if you don't know what you're gonna deal with in there, then it makes no sense. But if you know what you wanna do, and it adds with the physical strength, then that is the kind of guy that we want in our team. But if you don't have any idea of what's going on there, you might run that 10-kilometer race in 5 minutes. But if you can't stand in front of an elephant, if you can't know how to interpret any actions that the animals can give you, then you're gonna be in trouble in there. You are the one who is going to shoot all those animals, because every mock charge, every charge that you're gonna face, the only way to defend yourself is to shoot those. So we need somebody who has got a background, or somebody who has got interest, somebody who has got the light of what's going in there. That gives you an idea of how to deal with it whenever you are in a situation when you're out there. The training itself, it's more like a foundation. They give you a foundation, then the rest you're gonna build it on your own when you are out in a field. So, and if you are somebody who comes in, with having this physical fitness well, and you excelling on that, and whatever comes after that, you're most likely to ignore it, and you're not going to survive out there. So we need somebody who can have a bit of background and knows how to survive when he's out there. This is just a test to say that, are you going to be able to walk those extra miles? Are you going to be able to do this? But the main aspect that we're looking for is that a bit of background.
And on a day-to-day, like, because you were talking about how you have, you have some guys who are off and some guys who are on. That's how it works. People got to sleep. But when you're out there and maybe it's 10 guys are on, it seems like you're going out in teams of 2 a lot. Is that fair to say?
Yes. A minimum of 2, and it could be a max of 5.
Okay.
Yeah, but it has to be minimum of 2 so that you can be able to defend for yourself and your colleague. But if you are alone, then if something happens, then who's gonna defend for you? Who's gonna look for you then? All
right. So outside of getting specific intelligence on an actual area to go to, if something may be going down, if you're on a normal day, do you guys? I would imagine across your 54,000 hectares, is that what it is? Mm-hmm. I would imagine you guys have, if there's 5 teams of 2 going out at one time, you guys have different areas that you're each patrolling, and you're just kind of like going around, checking off, making sure everything's in order, all the animals that you usually track are there, and if there's not, then an investigation happens.
Yes, affirmative. That's what we basically do. We check for any illegal activities or anything out of ordinary that might be happening, and we investigate. If nothing happens, we still don't go and relax and say that it's quiet, because you never know. You might have walked now 5 minutes later down the line and something is happening. So as I've said earlier, that we're going that extra mile to make sure that nothing happens. So we don't relax as rangers. We scan. But however, if you pick up something, then we sort of like pulls, well, not everyone in, but you call what we call backup to try and add manpower to try and support that. If, let's say, the guys are showing direction, they're heading north, then you've got what we call a stopper group. That sort of like helps in terms of closing the gap, because you never know. If you're behind the guys, you don't know how far they've gone. But if you've got another team scanning in front, they're most likely to pick up those tracks that you maybe 20 miles away trekking. So it will be more like an advantage if we've got another team trekking in front, because they will pick it up, and in that moment you have already closed that 20 miles that you were away, because now the guys are going to start from there and moving forward. And you might find that from wherever they are, they're very much close to finding the guys. So you always play around. If ever there is something that you have picked up, you play around with your team, you position them here and there where you think or you suspect that the guys might most likely to cross, and that's how we operate in this game of nowadays.
Yeah.
Because otherwise you've got to think out of the box in order to catch these guys. This thing of always staying behind, tracking them from behind, you might not win, because they know that once you pick up the tracks, you won't ignore it, but you will track them. So they make it harder for you, to can find them, to can catch up with them. So you need people who can assist here and there, cut corners and check if they didn't cross, and that's how you close the gap.
What are some things that poachers are starting to do tactic-wise that is, I don't know, smarter for them, that is making your job, you have to be more and more on your toes?
They always claim that they're smarter than us, but no, they're not. They're not. If they don't have somebody within your team who is helping with information, who is providing information, then they're not gonna win in this game. What they do, the tactics that we have picked up, because we humans and we think like them. They have got this tendency of putting socks underneath their shoes. to try and make it difficult for us, to can pick up the track. Because now if there is a sock underneath, you won't see the shoe pattern. So it's like maybe birds were playing or something was happening, but you won't think it's a human being.
Wow.
But we know those tricks. We know what they're doing, and we own it, because it shows that it wasn't. That's the reason why when we're out there we investigate. When we see such signs, we don't just look and walk away, because that's what we're out there for. We investigate. If it was birds playing maybe in sand or something, it's good, because that's what we want. We want a clean environment. We want nothing to happen in there. So we spend too much time in investigating such up until we can confirm that, okay, there is nothing that links to this that we're suspecting here. So hence I'm saying that they think they're clever, but they're not, because it's not working. You can see that there was a mark here and a couple of steps. It's more like because a bird can do it here and do it like in a pattern where a human being can do it. Then obviously that tells you that no, somebody walked here. And we've got canines. That,
you do?
Yes, that
Yeah, they
can
become huge.
Yeah,
Let's go.
they are the huge game changer. Because
German Shepherds or?
Yes.
Nice.
Because they can pick up the scent. And even if they did that, the scent is still there. So they're just wasting their time. As I'm saying that they think they're clever, but they're not.
Yeah, just on the dogs real quick. I mean, there's the German Shepherds and Malamutes are the other ones that they often use. So it's a lot of the times the rangers will go out with them and catch the tracks, and then the dogs can help track them.
That's awesome.
They also, in Kruger, they have the bloodhounds that actually came from Texas, and they started using the hounds. And what they'll do is they'll take a whole group of hounds up in a helicopter, and when they know they have poachers active out there, and then they drop all these hounds out and just let them off leash, and they just chase like
they
mad.
Like parachute them down?
Well, they land. I'd love to see that. A bunch of little hounds.
That'd be the most Texas thing ever. Go get them, boys!
Little shoots dropping, and then, but they land on the ground, and then they let them all loose, and they let them get the scent of where the poachers are. And then if you're a poacher, just imagine being out there trying to escape, and you kind of think you're evading them, and then all of a sudden you hear all these hounds running after you, and they go way faster than you do. So it's been a big game changer in Kruger as well to be able to have these hounds go out, because they'll track them and pin them down somewhere, and then the rangers can catch up in the helicopter.
That's great.
And drop right in and grab them. So yeah,
dogs are huge, man.
Yeah,
I've had the privilege of having a couple serious dog guys in here. I had a Dale Comstock, who's like, I mean, he's a military legend in this country, and one of his specialties now, he's a mercenary around the world at this point, and he trains canines for serious people. And then I just had Mike Ritlin on, who's a former Navy SEAL, who was one of the first guys to train the Navy SEAL dogs when they adopted that, and now he actually is kind of stopped training for military, but for a long time once he left the military, was training a lot of the dogs for the military and also rehabilitating those who were leaving the military and everything. But when you get these guys talking about the tool that a dog can be, it's a lot more than just what you see at the airport where they're sniffing a bomb or something. I mean, that is an amazing, amazing creature to have on the ground helping with stuff like this.
And they do that as well. Some of the entry check gates coming in and out of these different reserves, they'll have dogs and they'll sniff around, and they can detect rhino horn or ivory and different things like that. But just to continue a little bit on, Orlat was talking a lot about tracking and anti-tracking and stuff like that. But from like a bigger level, a lot of the people that are also involved in poaching within these reserves are maybe construction workers that are coming in and working on a house. Or a lodge or something or it could be a lodge worker or a guide, and they have access and they're there for a longer period of time. Sometimes they'll do the poaching, but often they'll give the information to the poachers. And then, in Kruger, you could come in for a day ride. If you manage to hide a gun in your car, you could come in, get dropped off, walk, shoot a rhino, car comes around, picks you up, takes you out.
That's
And
so big.
yeah, it's such a big place. It's hard to detect all of these different things, and you have so many different people moving in and out at different security clearances and things like that. It makes it really difficult. So yeah, these guys have to be on top of it, and they're very wise to the tricks that these guys are trying to play.
Orlat, how often are you guys losing an animal these days?
Well, if I can talk for Timbavati, it's not that bad. After the assassination of the late Anton Mzimba, we stood firm and we said that, okay, we're not letting that happen, because we know that the reason why they wanted to take us out of the system is because they wanted to poach, freely in there. So since Anton was shot, we only lost 3, and all that were from Mozambicans.
So that's about in the last 2 years almost.
In the last 2 years, yes.
And were those all rhinos, or was there an elephant in there?
No, it was rhinos. Up to this far, the only challenge that we're having it's rhinos.
Okay.
So it was Mozambicans, and they were shot right next to the boundary between us and Kruger National Park, because we are in an open system. We don't have fences.
Right.
So they seem to might have came from Mozambique and walked across Kruger,
which is not a short distance,
into our block, and quickly went back.
Now, is Mozambique, is that like a major, I don't know, what's the word I'm thinking
like entry point, or?
Yeah, but no, is that a major hotspot where a lot of these syndicates are based out of?
Yes, most of them from Mozambique. We have those that we call, they're coming from local communities, but it's the guys from Mozambique, those who came to so that they can operate from the close range. Then they came to find spots to maybe book or rent a place to stay for the time being close by, so that it's a walkable distance from there to the park and back. And we often see the locals as well joining those group of Mozambicans. You find that within a group of 3, maybe there is 2 Mozambicans and 1 local guy. And as time goes on, you find that the guy who was operating with those Mozambicans, he has learned the tricks now. So he's gonna go and find maybe 2 or 3 locals, but yeah, most of them are from Mozambique. As you can see, even those guys, those who were arrested on that clip, they were from Mozambique. But they said that they're renting a place somewhere close by.
Now, we can't show this on this episode, what I'm about to talk about, because it'll get demonetized and then no one will see it because it's too long and all that stuff. But I know I've talked about this a bunch with Ryan, something that certainly affected him. But when they do poach these rhinos, it's particularly nasty how they do it. I mean, it's awful that they're killing anything in the first place, but how they do it particularly offends my soul. Because technically, if you wanted to get a rhino horn, there's a way to do it, and you shouldn't be fucking getting it, but there's a way to do it where you don't kill the rhino. You do it right. I forget, Ryan said it might take like a half hour or something like that. You get the horn off, you dart the rhino, get the horn off, and then, it wakes up and at least it's still alive. But these guys don't have a half hour because they're worried about guys like you coming after them. And so they go and they hack its face off. I mean, there's no better way to put it, unfortunately. And they create, they're not even kind enough usually to put the animal out of their misery. When they finish, they just leave it there to bleed out for sometimes, Ryan said it could be like 3-4 hours before they even die. And there's something about that is so like, it's like to me it's like the ultimate fuck you from these guys that just shows you how evil they are. Because if you see these images, and I would encourage people, as hard as that is, to go, you'll see some of it in the documentary after the fact, but there's also images and there's videos on YouTube that will show you this, where you see, sometimes you'll see like a calf of a baby rhino next to the mother rhino that's just dying. Like, you know, I got to imagine that's not something that ever obviously gets comfortable to see, but like every time you come upon something like that, it's got to affect you every time. No, like it doesn't get old, if you will.
It does. Every time you walk into a carcass, you feel like you have lost your family member. You don't get used to that. You don't get used to seeing that. So, and with how, like as you've said, with the cruelty, how the guys are doing it, I mean, it's something else. It's heartbreaking. So, and you don't want to see that. And it's the reason why we're going that extra mile, because we don't want to see that. We out there trying to do our best to protect the rhinos or wildlife in general. But every day, if you come into a situation like that, you feel like you have failed to deliver. It breaks you. But then it makes you to be stronger, to make sure that you don't want to see that again. So, yeah, but it's not a nice scene to be in, seeing a dead rhino lying there. I mean, it's, well, not a dead rhino, but a poached one.
Yeah.
It's very, very heartbreaking.
And the elephants, when they take the tusks off, sometimes they'll just take the whole face. I mean, it's just like,
you can't take a tusk like you can a rhino horn either. There's not a humane way to do that.
No,
but
it's horrible.
I mean, it's like in the film, we tried to be sensitive to make it not overly gory, right, and not show a rhino actually being poached, and we never captured that. But I think, especially when trying to show why these men and women are risking their lives to this extent, like you need to see what the stakes are. And so we did show some carcasses, and we have one rhino that was poached but survived. And there's some amazing wildlife vets that have just developed some just incredible ways to try and heal some of these wounds that are, I mean, when you see it, it's kind of unbelievable. Like you said, these poachers will hack the horn off below the root just to try and get every little bit they can for that extra money. And it's such a, they're in such a hurry that they're not worried at all about the rhino. And I think that really does, it just really inflames that anger within you and makes you pretty pissed off at what these guys are doing. And
you know what it reminds me of when I see the ones who I guess fortunately survive. They basically leave them like Harvey Dent. And seriously,
yeah.
Where like
like
Two-Face in Batman, where one side of the face is human and the other side you can literally see the skull. I mean, it's horrible. It's hard, and it's horrible to look at.
Yeah, it's heartbreaking.
Yeah,
but I mean, the efforts to save the rhinos that are poached have been important, because the poaching has just declined the population so low that if we can save them and then put them back into a breeding cycle and continue, populating rhinos, it's important, even if it's, tough to see, to try and save them if they can. But yeah, it's terrible. And then like the orphans, like you're saying, we feature some of that as well. But these
the
little
orphan rhinos.
Yeah, these little baby rhinos. I mean, they'll come up on a carcass of a mother, and sometimes the little baby's like half inside the rotting carcass, just trying to like cuddle up with their dead mom. And it's like, yeah, to hear some of those stories, it kind of makes you want to go out there and hurt people. It's pretty intense.
There used to be an exhibit, I believe it was at the Brooklyn Zoo years and years ago. This had to be like 1930s, something like that, where it was called The Most Dangerous Animal in the World. And it was a mirror.
Yeah.
So that when a human looked in the mirror, they could understand, the capability that we have. And in this story, that's the wild thing. We see the great, and then we see the worst too. We're seeing good and evil. But, I think it's important for people, like I said, to at least see it. So as bad as that is, they can understand it. Like I know when I've shown it to some of my family members who had no familiarity that any of this was going on. I mean, You know, I'm not even talking about people who are like animal lovers, and there's something in you that just goes, wait a minute, like that's a dinosaur they're doing that to. That's like one of the most majestic things on the earth, and it definitely pisses you off. But we had mentioned it a little bit ago. I didn't want to forget about it. Marianne and is it Ruben?
Ruben, yeah.
Okay, so they're a couple that you cover in this film, and I also want to talk about the other one who tragically died.
Martin Mzimba.
Yeah, so we'll get there. But these two, what's their backstory? How did they end up doing this?
So both of them have a military background. I think they met when they were in the military, actually.
That makes sense.
Yeah. And she's Marianne is an incredible shooter as well. Ruben would always tell these stories about how guys would come up to him and be like, "All right, why don't we have a shoot off?" And he'd be like, "Why don't you go have a shoot off with my wife?" And then they'd make a bet with some money, and then they'd go, "Oh, okay, yeah." And then they'd go, and she would just crush them. And then they'd come back with their head hung low. But yeah, they had a military background. Ruben, he always says he's been, he loved the military, but what he loved the most is developing people. And so I believe he did some training while he was in the military of other soldiers. I think he was in cavalry, and he actually rode horses, and just incredible stories. And so at some point, he got connected to the Bureau of Natural Resources, I think is what it was called there, and started training rangers and really got connected to that world. And I think what really inspired him too was just like the amazing work that these men and women were doing, but also the lack of resources they had in training. And so he just kind of went full on, developing this training for rangers, because there really wasn't a strong curriculum and method for ranger training, like bridging that conservation work together with the paramilitary and all the things that rangers have to do. So he and Marianne really worked hard. She eventually came in and helped create the actual manuals and started working more closely after Ruben had gotten in. And at a certain point, they ended up leaving, or they lost their jobs with the Bureau of Natural Resources, and they wanted to continue doing this work. So they started African Field Ranger Training Services, their own company, and started being contracted to train rangers all around Africa. And that's when eventually
all around all of Africa.
Yeah. It was like because I think Ryan. I spoke with Ryan a little bit. Ryan Tate, and he had worked up in Tanzania and knew Wayne Lauder, who tragically was assassinated as well, similar to Anton's situation. But
is that the guy who was in the middle of the street?
He was I think he was in a taxi either coming to or from the airport in Dar es Salaam.
Yep.
And they just shot him right there in the car.
Yeah.
And their organization, Pam's Foundation, he and Chrissy Clark, they had contracted AFRTS to come train, and Martin Mzimba was the one that was up there, and this was their partner in this training. And so Martin was this incredible trainer that Ruben met. I think Ruben met him early on, and he was supposed to be his interpreter or something. And he was like, this guy shouldn't be an interpreter. Like, this guy knows what he's doing. And he's like, he was also a soldier. And so they really connected, and he ended up bringing him in as a trainer, and then became really good friends and started this company, and he became a partner of it, and just became Ruben and Marianne's one of their closest friends.
Now how did they determine who? So they're private, and you said they train rangers all over Africa. So does the government send specific heats to them, if you will, of people, or is it randomized, what rangers they end up training?
I think it depends on what organization they're connected with. So, they trained a lot of rangers for Kruger National Park in South Africa. So they would contract them out and say, hey, maybe they need a selection. They need this many rangers. We'll pull from a group of, a couple hundred. We need 30, and you'll run them through this selection process. And then once they get through, then you train them, however many weeks, 12 weeks or so, to become a ranger for us. So they would get contracted out by all these different reserves or parks and different organizations to come in and do the ranger training there. And they would just basically set up camp and run their course and run the people through it so they can hire the rangers into their system.
And so you guys were filming with these guys, it seems like, since the beginning? Even when there were some of the rough cuts, or did they come in more 2018-ish?
Yeah, so Matt had worked with Ruben and Marianne at the Southern African Wildlife College. That's how he got connected to them. He went and studied there and then ended up helping train rangers with them. So, essentially, this organization, AFRTS, that Ruben and Marion created, eventually was purchased or bought by the Southern African Wildlife College and kind of absorbed into it somewhere around, I think, 2015 or so, maybe a little bit earlier. And so that's how we captured this selection. It was at the Wildlife College. But there is some old footage with Martin in it, and that was shot in 2011, I think. And it was kind of archival footage before we got involved. Another amazing guy, Phil Hutting, who just passed away back in, I think it was end of the year. I was at his memorial in January, but he had become great friends with Ruben and Marion, and shot conservation films all over the world, but did a lot of stuff for AFRTS, Ruben's organization. So we just lucked out when we were there in 2018. This Phil was visiting Ruben and had this hard drive full of all this footage of Martin, because before that we had nothing for his story other than a few photos.
When did he pass again?
Martin?
Yeah.
He passed in 2014, I believe.
And that was just a car accident.
Yeah, it was just a tragic car accident. And the roads are, everywhere in the world, I feel like more people die from freaking car accidents.
Yeah, but there was nothing sinister there.
No, I think, people were concerned about that as a possibility, but I don't think there was ever really any evidence that anything sinister happened. But when Martin died, that's when Matt, he was very close. Martin was a huge mentor of Matt Lindenberg's, and Matt wanted to do something to carry on his legacy and to support the Rangers in this development of the local population to become leaders, kind of following in Martin's footsteps. And through that, he got this idea to create Global Conservation Corps and to shoot some videos to tell the Rangers stories. And I don't think he ever knew that this was going to snowball into a huge film over the years, but it's all because of Martin passing away that this project initially started.
Okay. Now, Orlat, what, from a funding perspective, where are you guys sourcing a lot of things right now, or how can people help? Is there a place where people can donate specifically to Timbavati?
Yes, there is a website where all the information, is there.
All right, we'll have that link in the description. Remind me to do that.
Yep. Yeah. And because Timbavati is a non-profit organization, there is a lot of difficulties, in terms of finances and all that. So any donations, it goes a mile, in terms of making us to do what we're doing now, to keep the Timbavati running. We appreciate anything from technology to anything. In fact, basically, it's more than welcome, because that's what we want. Any support that we get, we really appreciate it.
The technology is a huge point. That could be such a game changer for you guys. I'm just thinking about that, if we could get you funding on that. But you also have been talking earlier about how, it's hard because so many poachers can then get turned or go the wrong way. What are you, from a vetting perspective, when you're just getting candidates coming in, what are you guys doing to try to figure out who might be good and who might not, or is it really just a guessing game?
We have what we call a lie detector test, which it's a policy that we have implemented.
That's cool.
Lie detector test or deception policy, where we test the guys before and even when you have been employed. We just do it randomly to scan if you haven't been approached and got involved into this war that's going on. You sort of providing information, or you might have shot a rhino, because there are those that we say they are rangers, but when they're out there, they shoot those rhinos themselves instead of going out to protect them.
Right.
So we've got that in place to always keep rangers, clean. And you always keep the rangers second guessing to say that, I don't know when am I gonna be called in for that. So But if you have the right guys, you've got nothing to worry about, because even if you can call them today and tomorrow and whenever, the results will always come back clean. But the reason why we're doing that is to check if those that we having, they haven't turned into something else. And if you're able to pick that up, then the organizations, they've set a rule to say that if you fail for the first time, then they might give you a second chance, because it's a machine. It might not be 100%. They might do you the second test, but if you failed it, then unfortunately they terminate your contract. And it's the reason why we lost those few guys back then, those that they were planning to take myself and Anton out of the system. It's because they were part of this, and because they failed their polygraph, then they thought myself and Anton, we had something to do with that, and that's why we became their targets.
They thought you guys rigged their polygraph.
We manipulated the results because we wanted to get rid of them, and it's the reason why they wanted. It was more like a revenge to say to them that you made us lose our job, so now we want to make you lose your life.
Yeah.
Whoa.
It's pretty wild. I mean, a lot of these reserves implement these integrity tests, and even in the selections at the end, it's part of the weeding out process. And at first I was kind of skeptical. I'm like, lie detectors, they're not perfect, but I feel like a lot of these guys kind of swear by them as, you give them a couple chances, but it seems like with this much corruption, there's not too many options, and you might have someone you think is the perfect ranger, and then turns out they're poaching rhinos. So yeah, I don't know. There's no easy answer, but I think a lot of it's building good trust and relationships, but it's tough in an environment like this.
Are there people of note higher up in the South African government right now who are really taking this seriously and are obviously not corrupt on the issue and are trying to help? And if so, like what are they doing? What actions are they taking?
Yeah, I wouldn't call myself an expert on the South African government, but
it's okay.
I think there are a lot of people trying to make efforts, but oftentimes I don't think it's a big priority. There's so many other issues that wildlife crimes is pretty low, unfortunately, on the list.
Yeah. And again, this is one, you guys are one bite of the pie on a pie of a country that then is a bite of the pie on the pie of a whole continent. So it's like these changes, it's amazing to see what you're doing. It's amazing to see what VetPaul is doing and organizations like that to set standards across the board that hopefully can be replicated by a bunch of other great little divisions, if you will, to help combat this problem across the continent. But, the challenge is obviously there's all kinds of socioeconomic challenges there that we've laid out, and there's certainly headwinds with the fact that you have corruption and you have syndicates buying people off, and we haven't even talked about some of the money on the back end of this, but the 500-pound elephant in the room, no pun intended, is that you have sometimes people as high up as in like the government in China who are on the other end buying this stuff.
Oh, yeah. There's a story. I think we were actually at a United for Wildlife event. I'm trying to think when this was, the end of 2022 or somewhere around there. We were presenting, but they pulled up the fact that they had caught this major player in, I think they were selling monkeys from Cambodia to people in the States for like testing either medical or whatever. And the guy was like I think he was one of the heads of the environment in Cambodia. He was on his way to a CITES event in Panama, which is like, where everyone comes to talk about how we're going to regulate trade of illegal wildlife and all this stuff. He was coming to represent Cambodia, and they had been tracking him for a while. I think U.S. Fish and Wildlife was involved, and they knew, they had all these things linking him to it. And so when he landed in JFK, they apprehended him there and arrested him and brought him in, and I think they charged him in the U.S. I don't know what his current status is,
Good.
But yeah, it just goes to show. I mean, it's like people are making money at the top, and it's at every level, and it's just super unfortunate.
There's literally stories of like a bunch of Chinese diplomats coming into countries for meetings, and then like they come in and they have a big yacht, and they'll take the little tugboat out to the yacht after they're done, and they got like rhino horn and ivory like in their luggage and stuff, and they're smuggling it out, and it makes it really tough when you have, in that case, and there's other countries that are doing this obviously, but you have the second most powerful country in the world, the people who are literally in the government, they're like untouchables, and they just come in here and do it, and they don't give a fuck. They're like I've heard stories that they want a rhino horn on their table to act like they got a bigger dick in business.
Yeah.
I mean, that's just... And there's a line in your documentary, I think Ruben said it, where he's like, the goal here is to... I can't do his accent. The accent's really hard. It's a different... I gotta practice my South African accent. Shout out to Leo for doing that in Blood Diamond. That was hard as shit. But, you know, he's like, they're trying to take them down till they're gone because then it'll be worth way more.
Yeah.
And I'm just like, really? Like... Because then it'll just eventually be gone, period, because everyone will lose their rhino horns.
But then it's extremely rare at that point. You know, there's only so much of it. I think there's Dr. Johan Murray, who's we have in the film, and he's talking about Hope, the rhino that's poached and survives.
Yeah.
But I had interviewed him on the podcast, and he was saying, I think they were connected to some people that were going over to, I think they were going to China, and they were trying to talk to people that were selling this illegally, kind of on a black market. And they were talking to some guy that had his own little setup, and he's like, I think they were saying like something about the rhinos and how many are left. He said the same exact thing. He's like, I can't wait until there's no more rhinos because then my horn's going to be worth so much that it's just like, I think for him it was completely heartbreaking. He's like, if that's people's mentality, then how are we going to combat this? And that's a whole other topic, is demand reduction and trying to create pressure in places like China or Vietnam for rhino horn specifically, to change the mindset of people using it or buying it. But at a certain level, I feel like some of these super rich people, they
don't care.
It's going to be,
I mean, that's what Ryan did in his undercover work. He went with these people, and you'd have to see it. You know, they'd walk him into like an attic of just ivory everywhere, with blood stains still on it and everything. He's got to act normal because, he's undercover buying for a rich guy, but like it's just a product. It's just, and it's very hard, especially when you have it culturally ingrained. It's very hard to change those attitudes. That's the real headwind there. But they're not the ones that have to deal with the consequences as much as the people that they're taking it from. But listen, man, your film is amazing. I really appreciate you guys coming here and telling the story, and Orlat, you've obviously you're in the film, and like this is part of your life story too. So I appreciate you sharing your perspective on that as well. And it certainly seems to me like you're doing your buddy Anton's legacy a solid by the bravery you're showing doing the job you do. So thank you for what you do, and hopefully people out there listening will not only check out this documentary, Rhino Man, link will be in the description, but also check out and figure out how to help you out at Timbavati as well. I think that would be really, really cool, because you guys are obviously doing great work.
Yeah. No, thanks a lot. I really appreciate you having us here, and we're glad we made it. We shared our side of the story. So just to confirm that this is not something that has been manipulated, but it's something that we're facing on our daily basis. This is the real life of a ranger when we're out there. These are the challenges that we're facing every day. So like as we said, people need to go and watch it so that they can, because back then I understand maybe there is few that understand what a ranger is, but you might find that a lot of people doesn't even know what a ranger is.
Well, stay safe, keep your family safe as well. I hope we can get some resources on that too. It's very scary. And Leda, thanks so much for doing this today. You did an amazing job, and your cousin was an amazing guy, Anton. So it's cool to see you here as well for for the premiere of the documentary. And again, shout out to Prince William and the royal family for giving this some attention. I hope that continues to happen. That could be really, really cool.
Yeah. And so it'll be available on like Amazon, Apple, Google. You know, you can go on there, rent it, and
link in description.
Yeah, we'll put links, and yeah, please watch it and share it with your friends. And next time you see a ranger, tell them thank you.
All right. Well, thank you guys so much. Everybody else, you know what it is. Give it a thought. Get back to me. Peace. Thank you guys for watching the episode. Before you leave, please be sure to hit that subscribe button and smash that like button on the video. It's a huge help. And also, if you're over on Instagram, be sure to follow the show at Julian Dorey Podcast, or also on my personal page at Julian D. Dorey. Both links are in the description below. Finally, if you'd like to catch up on our latest episodes, use the Julian Dorey Podcast playlist link in the description below. Thank you.